Good evening, everybody. It is 6 o'clock and we're trying to be nice and prompt. So welcome to our regular council meeting for Wednesday, April 12th, 2023. And we are hybrid in council chambers. Our only regret this evening is Councillor Downer, who's here with us in spirit, but unfortunately not able to log in or attend. Just to share along the good news, he is recovering very well. I've heard that he's doing well and on the mend. So he's with us again in spirit today. So first order of business is calling to order and asking if there's any declarations of conflict of interest relating to tonight's agenda. Seeing none, I'll move on to our introductory remarks, land acknowledgement, and pass the mic over to Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mayor Gordon. The town of Midland recognizes that it is located on the land, which is the traditional and treaty territory of the Anishinaabeg people, now known as the Chippewa Tri-Council, comprised of Beausoleil First Nation, Rama First Nation, and the Georgian Island First Nation. This territory is within the Pre-Confederation Treaty 5 and Treaty 16, and included with the William Treaties of 1923. The town of Midland recognizes that it is located on land which is the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat and the historic homelands of the Métis, and that our town is home to a large and diverse community of Indigenous peoples. I would now like to deliver the following safety messages. Should the fire alarm activate, please exit the room in an orderly fashion, follow the fire chief, and proceed to the evacuation assembly area, which is located in the upper parking lot. You may find the exit to the main entrance, point to the double doors, and make an immediate left and proceed out the front doors, or through the secondary exit, which is here behind the council table, up the stairs, check the doors for heat before opening, and if it's safe, exit onto the second floor, turn right, and proceed out the doors in front of you. Washrooms are located on the second floor to the left of the seating area, and the elevator is located just outside the main entrance. As Midland has a respectful workplace policy, anyone that exhibits violence or harassing behavior will be asked to leave. So council meetings are recorded via Zoom and are posted on the town YouTube site. The meetings are also broadcast on Rogers TV Midland Channel 53.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I'll now ask just for a moment of silent reflection before we get going tonight. Thank you very much. Get things started with the approval of the agenda. I have a motion moved by Councillor East, seconded by Councillor Meredith, that the contents of the regular council agenda for April 12th be approved. Any discussion around that? All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Next, moving to the consent agenda, item 5, I have a motion moved by Councillor Bald, seconded by Councillor Prost, that the items and related recommendations contained within the April 12th, 2023 consent agenda as consent items having been considered by council be adopted with the exception of the following 3 that were pulled. Item 5.4.1 CSR 2023-11, Bill 23, More Homes Built Faster Act and implications for the town of Midland. The next item is item 5.4.2 CSR 2023-20, the taxi licensing program update. And the last one is item 5.4.2 CSR 2023-22, the MPUC Sale Proceeds Investment Committee disbandment, which will be considered under section 12, reports and other items withdrawn from consent agenda for council's consideration, which includes presentations by consultants regarding a report under consideration. Council, are you satisfied with those 3 reports being pulled? All in favor? Any opposed? And that is carried. All right, next a motion moved by Councillor Ball, seconded by Councillor McDonald, that this council resolve into the committee of the whole. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. I'll turn the mic over to Deputy Mayor.
Claire,
Sorry about that. I saw your hand. I wasn't sure we were just voting. Please go ahead, Councilor McDonald.
clarification. We approved the pulling of the 3 reports, but do we get to address verbally just
Yes, you got me. I glazed over that. Typically, if there's something isn't pulled, there is an opportunity for discussion before we call the question for any items that remain on the consent agenda. As we have already approved that, I'd be more than happy to simply allow discussion quickly before we move into committee of the whole if we could. It's a little break in formality, but please, Councilor McDonald, do you have anything you'd like to share?
just clarification, if I may, in regards to correspondence that's included in our correspondence information package from individuals addressed to county or mayor and council. Are those replied by the mayor?
It would depend on which one. Typically, if I get correspondence that asks for a reply, I make a point of replying. However, council doesn't see my reply because it becomes a council meeting. Is there a specific piece of correspondence you'd like to inquire about? And I can let you know what I actioned on it.
St. Teresa's bursary and awards, nuisance lighting.
That one I have not replied to. That's simply sent in for all of council's consideration.
Okay.
We don't believe we currently have a dark sky policy other than for commercial lighting, if I recall vaguely, but perhaps I could just hand over to staff just to quickly comment on that letter. The gist of the letter is concerns around light pollution.
I can follow up in the future about it.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, if you didn't want to take it offline and talk to staff. I know we do have some policies on lighting in relation to commercial, but I don't believe there's anything for residential at
Thank
this
you.
time. Any other call outs from the consent agenda? All right, perfect. Now I'll hand over to Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, council, staff, and guests in the audience. Of course, the viewers out in Midland watching tonight, so welcome. Our committee of the whole has a number of items to discuss tonight and bring forth. We're going to start with the public meeting hearing. I have just a bit of an introduction for this, and I'll begin. So thank you. I would like to call the public meeting to order. The public meeting is being held under the Planning Act to consider an application for a proposed amendment to the town's zoning bylaw 2004-90 respecting 422, 424, 426 Yonge Street. In accordance with the Planning Act, if a person does not make an oral submission at the public meeting or make written submissions before bylaw is passed or an approval given, you will not be entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal, and you may not be added as a party to a hearing on an appeal to the OLT unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. The purpose of this public meeting is to hear from residents to seek clarity on the application. Council is not making a decision on the application or taking a position. Staff will report back in the future with a recommendation report. This is your opportunity to speak, and council encourages you to do so. I will now ask the town's senior planner, Andy Warzen, to introduce the application, confirm notification, and to note any correspondence received. Mr. Warzen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Good evening, members of council, fellow staff members, and members of the public who are here in attendance and virtually. This is my first time in front of council, so I'd just like to formally introduce myself. I'm Andy Warzen. I am the senior planner with the town. Happy to be here this evening. As you heard from the Deputy Mayor, I'm overseeing the rezoning application. It pertains to, actually, sorry. Wait, okay. I'll cue just when to switch slides. Thank you. Yeah, as the Deputy Mayor had indicated, I'm overseeing the application for a rezoning zoning bylaw amendment. The subject property pertains to 422, 424, and 426 Young Street. The owner of the property is Les Shannon and their planning consultant is IPS Consulting, Inc. Next slide, please. The subject property is noted there in the red hatch square. It's located on the north side of Young Street, bounded between Manley and Queen Street. The current, next slide, please. The current configuration of the property includes it's one conveyable lot, which contains one building containing 3 separate dwelling units within it. These units are 2-story in 2 floors, 2 stories in height, and they're separated vertically, which almost take the form of a townhouse model. Next slide, please. So the application, again, it proposes to rezone the lands from a residential R2 zone to a residential townhouse with an exception zone. The slide you see in front of you this evening is our official plan designation. So the property is currently designated residential district in our previous official plan. The residential district includes all forms of housing type, including medium density, which includes townhouses. The reason why we're referring to the previous official plan is that we currently have an appeal on our new official plan, which in this instance, this property is within that catchment area. So the policies of the previous official plan are still in force and effect. Next slide, please. As indicated, the property is currently zoned residential R2. The slide you see in front of you here, the black circle there represents kind of our zoning layer, which demonstrates the current zoning again is R2. On the south side of Young Street, there's an R3 zoning. So, and then the right side of the slide there, you'll actually see the list of permitted uses under the residential R2 zone. You'll note that a townhouse dwelling unit is not permitted under that current zoning. So the application again is to convert that R2 zoning to a residential R2 exception zone. Next slide, please. So the R2, the exception zone, so the residential townhouse exception zone, more or less relates to having site-specific regulations, which are documenting the existing built form of the property, where the building is today. There's some decks in the rear yard. There's also some accessory structures that are located kind of in the rear and side yard of this property. So the site-specific regulations, if we can go to the next slide there, these would be the relief that would be required in order to move forward with the rezoning to a residential townhouse zoning there. And again, you'll note there that the highlighted yellow areas are indicating those provisions that would need relief from the zoning bylaw. You can see on the required residential townhouse zone what's required for lot area, minimum lot frontage, lot coverage. And again, the yellow hatched in areas to reflect those right now the deficient setbacks. So again, council will be considering those site-specific relief for the amending bylaw should we take place and be approved. Another item to consider is that in terms of any new development, the only thing that's going to be technically required is the construction of a new driveway for the proposed lot 2. Right now, I'm not sure whether the tenants are parking on the left or the right side, but there is 2 driveways already. So each lot would then have its own required driveway and required parking for that. Next slide, please. So this slide here just demonstrates the proposed lot configuration of how this building is going to be separated. Should council approve the application, a subsequent consent application would be required to go through the committee of adjustment to actually create those individual lots. So again, assuming that everything goes well in front of council and the application is approved, then there will be a committee of adjustment application to actually create those individual lots. And again, you can see that lot 2 now does have a proposed driveway there for it. Next slide, please. Really, this is a pretty straightforward application. Again, we're just looking to recognize the applicants are looking to recognize the existing built form and ultimately create individual lots out of the one big lot. My understanding is the planning consultant is available this evening and has a presentation for council and the public also. I'm sure they'll be able to answer any questions that you might have. I'm also available for any questions from council or members of the public, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Warzen, for your presentation, giving an overview of the subject property in the application. So thank you. At this point, I will now ask to extend an invitation to IPS Consulting Incorporated, agent on behalf of the applicant, to make a presentation and or provide any additional information. I believe we have Ms. Lauren Jeffrey and Mr. Calvin Bishart. Are they in the audience? There we go. Thank you. Ms. Jeffrey, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. My name is Lauren Jeffrey. I'm a planner with Innovative Planning Solutions here on behalf of landowners Greg and Les Shannon, who are with us here tonight as well. And seeing as Mr. Morrison gave also a detailed presentation before, I'll try to keep this very brief. But again, the purpose of this meeting is to provide details on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment for the subject lands known as 422, 424, and 426 Young Street. And the intent of this application is to facilitate the conversion of an existing 3-unit dwelling into individual townhouse units and recognize the built form of the property through site-specific provisions. Next slide, please. I won't get too in depth, but I will mention and add that there are existing servicing, full municipal servicing that are currently on the subject lands, and the surrounding neighborhood is characterized by residential uses. And next slide, please. So here I've shown the 2019 official plan, which is designating the subject lands as neighborhood residential, and the former 2002 official plan, which, as staff had noted, is designating the lands as residential district. And the proposal will remain in compliance with both the 2002 and 2019 official plan designations. So the property is currently zoned residential 2, also called R2, and the R2 zone currently permits a detached dwelling unit use, which again does not reflect the current dwelling existing on the property today. Next slide, please. So again, the intent of the zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the property from the R2 zone to a residential townhouse zone with site-specific provisions to permit the conversion of this 3-unit dwelling as a legal street townhouse use. Approving the zoning bylaw amendment will facilitate the future consent application to sever the property into 3 separate lots to accommodate 1 street townhouse unit each. And illustrated on this slide is a sketch of the proposed street townhouse lot configuration and includes the details of the current property. In support of the conversion, 1 new driveway would be directed off of Young Street and established on lot 2 to satisfy the parking requirements for lot 2, and proposed lot 1 and lot 3 will be accommodated in parking for the existing driveways. Next slide, please. Again, this is the requested site-specific provisions. I won't go into too much detail, but while there are a number of site-specific provisions, this is a just a result of recognizing the existing built form. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, approval of this subject zoning bylaw amendment would allow for a future consent application to sever the subject property into 3 separately conveyable lots as proposed. And these lots would be individually conveyed back to the current landowner. So overall, the proposed conversion will appropriately reflect the existing built form on the property and conforms to the policies of and land uses of the official plan designation. And next slide. And with that, I'd just like to conclude my presentation, and I'd be happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you for your presentation. We're going to ask if there's any clarification or any questions for our presenter today from council. Yes, sir, your worship.
Thanks. If there's any members of the public, because this is a public meeting, if that would like to speak to this, I'm happy to to play second fiddle and let you approach the mic first. Is there any members of the public here to speak to this application? Okay, seeing none. Sorry, I'm not meaning to steal your thunder, Deputy Mayor. Just a quick question about use. When I first learned of this project, it was described to me what the purpose was of turning these 3 rental units into their own registerable lots for sale. And I may know the answer to this question, but I just thought it might be nice to share with council and the folks that follow along what the intended purpose of dividing this up into individual registerable units is and whether this is a renoviction.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of this rental conversion is to just provide the opportunity to allow for either freehold. So it's not decided right now if whether or not it will continue as the current landowner continuing these individual rental units as freehold individual lots. But it does give the opportunity to either be freehold resale or continue as rental units.
Thank you, your worship. I want, just a follow-up, excuse me.
Sorry, so just to be clear then we're not really gaining more residential units, but having these units separated would give a person, which could be the current tenant or it could be somebody new, the opportunity to own these homes that would normally be only rental. Is that sort of a correct characterization of this?
That's correct. Yes, because they're all captured on one lot, they cannot be individually owned. So by individually severing them, they have the opportunity to be resold as individual townhouse units.
Thank you, your worship. I'm gonna, just before we have council, I'm gonna ask anybody from the floor to approach for any questions. Are there any questions from the audience? Are there any questions from the audience? Seeing none, I'll now move this to council for any further questions. And are there any, yes, Councillor Ball.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, this is probably a question for staff. Dividing these lots, does that change the tax revenue that comes to the town?
Through your deputy mayor to Councillor Ball. The assessment on those properties would, they would be reassessed by MPAC. And just my sort of gut feeling is yes, there would result in some additional tax.
Thank you to our CFO. Are there any further questions from council? Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cotton. Just in regards to the setbacks, there's quite a variance. And I'm wondering whether it causes concern with the planning department is my first question. And then the paragraph, these configurations can only be contemplated in context of the conversion of these existing properties. Town staff would not recommend support for such reduction in zoning bylaw requirements otherwise. So could someone address that paragraph for me, please?
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor McDonald. This is a proposal to take a building that's already constructed and there are existing kind of deficient setbacks around this existing structure and convert it for so that it can be conveyed, as the planning consultant indicated. Because it's an existing situation, we're not able to apply the regular standards. The building exists in the neighborhood, neighborhood context now with the established setbacks. And it's because it's constructed now with those deficiencies that we're allowing the zoning bylaw to go forward with those reductions. If it was a new building, it would be tested against the required standards for such a a built form, and there'd be a higher test. because it's not already built and has to meet our zoning bylaw standards today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or comments? Thank you for your presentation from IPS Consulting Incorporated. Really appreciate you filling us with information regarding the application. So thank you very much. Since there are no more further questions or comments, I'd like to thank the public for their comments who came up, and mostly it was council. I will call this public meeting to an end. So thank you very much for staff and the consulting firm to present this tonight. We're going to be moving on now to our next item is on presentations. There are no presentations this evening. Also, there is no reports with the Integrity Commissioner this evening. But we are now on to the deputations. We have two presentations this evening. I'd like to introduce the BIA. We have Ms. Joni Petrov and Ms. Megan Marshall on to present to council. You have 10 minutes to present, and then hopefully there'll be some comments or questions regarding your presentation. So thank you very much. I'll give you the floor.
Okay, I talk loud enough, so maybe you should have heard me. This is just a friendly introduction to our BIA. We've just restructured our BIA downtown, and we've spent a considerable past few months restructuring, reorganizing, and coming up with a future plan as to how we will move forward with our BIA. So to begin, I will introduce myself officially. I'm Joni Petrov, Megan Marshall, and this is Roberta Douglas. We are all board members. Our BIA mission is the Midland Business Improvement Area.
Next slide.
Next slide, please. Sorry, we're new to this, but you'll become familiar. We'll be seeing you.
So we're gonna go over our BIA mission statement, 5 strategic pillars that we have been working very hard on the last 6 months, and also some updates for the council and for anybody listening. What have we been working on for the past 7-8 months now?
So our mission is the
Next slide.
Midland Business Improvement Area is an association that acts on behalf of its members, merchants, restaurants, businesses, and landowners, along with the town of Midland, to ensure that downtown Midland is a safe, vibrant, thriving, and prosperous community in the heart of Georgian Bay. Our board members are Joni
Next
Petrov,
slide.
Roberta Douglas, Michael Selwood, Megan Marchand, Sarah Kenny, Nicole French, and Bill Meredith, who acts on behalf as our liaison with the town council. So we do have 5 pillars: beautification and signage, promotion and events, expansion and fulfillment, amenities and securities, business alignment, and communication. What we've done in structuring everything into a pillar is to break it down. We divide it between our board members so that we have an organized way in moving forward. And each of these pillars will branch out into the community as well, so that we can pull in community partners. So whether that be gardening clubs, organizations such as We Are the Villagers we worked with this past fall, volunteers, schools, high schools, elementary schools, anything like that. I'm going to have Megan start to explain our pillars.
Yeah, so pillar 1 is promotion and events. So the overall promotion of downtown and the routine events that drive Midland's core. We want more engagement, more communication between all of these non-for-profits and also other community engagement associations, and marketing the downtown through our key initiatives. So number 2, Roberta, beautification and signage. So we're on 2 slides from here, sorry. Yes, there we are. So beautification and signage. I think this one.
Okay, so we're managing the visual experience of the downtown and courting seasoning to create a delightful and memorable experience for visitors, providing clear signage to support an enjoyable downtown experience.
Yeah, so that one would include the planters, the hanging baskets, new signage, just to kind of become more
Direct people to
direct people
downtown.
to downtown, what we have to offer, and then our murals as well. We are known for our murals downtown, so making sure we keep those intact. And then number 3 is amenities and security. This has kind of been a hot topic, ensuring the daily experience of the community, tourists and BIA members is positive, safe and easy. This means making the area safe, clean and simple to be downtown. So all the snow removal, garbage, parking, garbage, security and the crosswalks. Definitely those. And expansion. Joni, do you want to do the expansion one?
One of the areas that we are very focused on is expanding our area. So currently, we would like to extend up 1 block from where we are, which to us would essentially involve the whole downtown area. So that is one of our main goals, that a priority for us from now moving forward. And
Like cohesive, like, okay, yes, the expansion. For example, we did a monster march, we'll explain later. And the downtown, they all went up to KFC and then came back, just assuming this is the downtown parameters of the VIA or of downtown. And so it just kind of makes sense to work on that expansion, continuing the VIA past Elizabeth Street up to
it will involve those
Yeah.
buildings as well as the building owners, and allows us to beautify that section of the street as well, because currently we only go up to Elizabeth Street. If we are able to further that up to the actual entryway to our downtown, it will just make everything cohesive, including planters. We did recently install new banners and we chose to go up the other block. So the buildings that we're looking to bring into our area will appreciate what we have to offer. And I think we have,
so next slide.
sorry, I'm nervous. I'm a
No,
little,
that's okay. So,
alignment and communication.
next slide. We're gonna keep up to date with the slide. So we are actually at number 5 now. Here we go. There we are.
So alignment and communication is to bring together the businesses and property owners of the BIA area to align and collaborate on downtown initiatives, operating hours, events, beautification, etc. Keep members aware of and include them in activities. So we have such a vibrant downtown. We have so much more to offer downtown Midland than quite a few small downtowns.
Yeah.
What all of our membership is looking for is to be brought together. And that is what we've been trying to do. We just began sending emails out to our membership so that they're aware of everything going on. We have updated all of our business listings within our membership, so we know who is involved. And there was a little break in communication prior to the new board, and that was really for lack of volunteer and help. So now that we have a larger board and we've organized ourselves, we have the means to be able to do that. And moving forward, you should see great things.
Yes.
And I think
We've
that
updated our website.
the
so,
website is getting there.
Yeah, so we also have a portal so you can enter your email and be updated with our weekly newsletters, engaging the community, letting the community know the events that we are planning for the downtown, and just have more engagement. Yeah. More activity.
Would anyone have any questions or suggestions?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, let me thank you very much for updating us on the BIA. You've done a
Thank
lot of work over the years and gone through a tough situation with the pandemic and over years with the big dig and just refocusing your energy to create a vibrant downtown. So thank you very much for your presentation. I'm going to open this up to council for any questions, comments. Councillor Ball.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. Really a nice slideshow. I'm just wondering, I know you guys talked about expansion, which I appreciated that you brought the murals up. That's a great start. I'm wondering the business owners, they don't often own the building. So is there a way that while you're trying to expand that membership to building owners, that you have a buy-in option for business owners so they're able to be included on the website?
Currently, the previous board had an association or an associate membership. And businesses that were out of the area could buy in. I think it was a 1-year term or a 3-year term to participate. If we do not find at this time or even within the next 6 months that we have a lot of interest in expanding, then we will continue with that associate membership. It's just at this time, what we're going to focus mainly on is growing the downtown. Another block and even branching out a little farther on the side streets would be helpful to us, because the more we are, the bigger we'll be.
The stronger, we're
Yeah.
stronger together. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Most people are going down young, so I'd love to see it expand to that. Appreciate
Thank
that.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Are there any other questions, comments, or that? Yes, Councillor East.
Thank you for the show. You did a great job. With us expanding the availability on docking for public docking to bring in new boats and stuff like that, I just thought it might be maybe a good situation to look at offering say like a downtown bucks for boaters to bring them in. I'm sure that we could work with the harbor front and have it there so that we might be able to utilize that and bring in even more boat traffic by offering something like boat dollars and getting them out to our restaurants and stuff like that. So just a thought on expanding not only tourism on the way of wheels, but tourism on the way of boats. Like
Thank you.
If we could reach out to them, because the thing is, you have Wolsey Island, tons of boaters go up there and they might want to scoot into Midland to catch a couple drinks from the liquor store or hit up some of our restaurants. So if we give them an opportunity to have a little bonus, we might be able to capitalize on that. So that's just a thought, if we could look at expanding that. I know when I do a lot of traveling, especially to even Niagara on the Lake, for instance, if you go downtown, you see flowers everywhere on Niagara on the Lake. And that's what draws me to come downtown. So I don't know if we have, a direction on really bringing some color and life to downtown. We have a beautiful downtown with all the new construction, but it's very, very industrial. So I don't know if we could take an approach at looking at bringing more color and more life to the downtown through maybe flowers or something.
I appreciate that. I myself am not a boater, so I don't look at it through their eyes, but we've been trying. This year, we've been really focusing on the cruise ships and speaking with Nicole Major and Karen Mealing. I know that they have plans moving forward and we will only be growing in that regard. So we've been focusing on how we're going to present our downtown to the cruise ships. However, we have a whole population of visitors in the boating community. And with our proximity so close to the water, it is a wonderful experience to be able to bring your boat to Midland and then spend an afternoon or an evening walking up the street. And I feel that we're very welcoming in that regard. So we will, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Downtown dollars, we'll add that.
You have a follow-up, Mr. East?
So through you, Deputy Mayor, again, thank you. Yeah, it would be a really great opportunity, especially if maybe we could, take a look at having, say, all of the businesses on board on a Friday night or Saturday night. It just creates a better shopping environment to draw people into Midland. But I really love the idea of, you know, something to offer somebody a reason to stay here and come here.
Yeah, 100%. So the start to that is the communication pillar. So once we have our communication down, all with all of the BIA members as well as our community, I think that would be our first step and into engaging everyone to be open late. When, you know, summer nights, the cruise ships are here, doing the downtown dollars and communicating to the businesses how to use those downtown dollars and to accept them and things like that. And also to your point of the beautification, that is one of our top priorities for sure, working with the town and Bill to ensure that we have a very beautiful downtown, because as you said, that is what brings people here and is the beauty and flowers. So watch this space.
So if I could just add another question, just to hear your concerns as well. You know, you want to promote safety. Is there an issue downtown? Like, are you finding that there's something that you want to be heard in consideration with safety of downtown? Not to paint it as dangerous, but are there concerns just that we could hear about?
No, not, we do want to help with the lighting. We can, and that's something that the individual businesses can help with, helping to keep the downtown at night. We do, businesses tend to close early, which makes it a little bit darker downtown. And for the businesses that are open and their lights are on, it's very sporadic. So again, with communication and keeping in unison with all of the downtown members so that they know, okay, we're going to leave our lights on, and hopefully that would just help to drive business for and help with security as well. So we do have a few ideas in motion in regards to the lighting of downtown and signage, and just to improve people to feel safe, but not necessarily say that downtown is unsafe, but just so that they feel more safe. Because yeah. Anything else you want?
Thank you. Oh,
you.
You'll follow up?
Thank you. What we have to do is get the shops open. So as Deputy Mayor had mentioned, we've been through a pandemic, we went through construction, we went through parking. So all of these things, this is our first full year where we're stabilized and we can move on in the fashion that we will be living in for the next 10 years. So speaking myself this week, I made some phone calls to businesses downtown and everyone was looking forward to a busy summer, and that includes staying open. And that helps with safety, right? So when we have the public in the community walking the streets and in and out of the shops and the restaurant and the patios out and the stores open, that really helps create a welcoming environment. And that is a mandate that we're looking forward to pressing this summer, really pushing to get everyone open on Friday nights, Thursday nights, Saturday, and get everyone downtown Sunday.
That in align with the beautification as well. So I think would definitely help for sure.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor Ball and Mayor Gordon and Councillor McDonald. Oh. That's good. Thank you. We'll now ask the mayor.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming tonight and sharing the new strategic plan with us and everybody watching. I think it's really exciting. I have, last term I didn't get too involved with the BIA because I wasn't assigned to it. And I just got to hear the BIA when they came to talk to us about concerns and wishes and budget and whatnot. But in the fall, leading up to the election, I had the privilege of sitting in your BIA AGM and watched the formation of this new board. And then, there's like any change, there's change and some pebbles in the path, and you guys have gotten through those and navigated wonderfully. I've also had the privilege of sitting with you at your meetings, just kind of as a fly on the wall, ex officio person, and watching our assigned Councillor Meritus, who's joined your team on the board, and watched you guys come together and really, find your place and find your legs and your footing and put together the strategic plan that you've shared tonight. So I think you guys are, you're off to a great start. You're availing yourselves of the OBIA. You're availing yourselves of town staff's wisdom on governance and how to run the BIA successfully. And the takeaway for the business owners and the building owners that are south of the current demarcation line on Elizabeth should be that this BIA, not slighting the previous BIAs, but this BIA means business. And with growth and expansion on the horizon, I know you're going to work tremendously hard to sell that value proposition to those building owners as to why they need to be part of the membership to enjoy the benefits and not just enjoy the benefits because they happen to be on King. So I, like you, don't want to see the beautification efforts stop at your boundary because it just kind of looks funny. It's like, hey, what happened? Why are there no baskets up here? But I also agree with your stance of let's not doing it anyway, because otherwise, what's the incentive then for those building owners to buy in and become members and to roll up their sleeves and be part of it? So I just want to shout out to what I've seen and heard at the meetings that I've attended. And I look forward to great things this term and how, this council and our municipality continue to support you in your efforts and continuing to make downtown a safe, thriving, vibrant community. So you're nailing it with your strategic plan and really happy to see this and glad that you shared it with us. So thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you so much, Mayor Gordon.
Thank you, your worship. I now have Councillor McDonald.
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor Cotton. Just when you were speaking about beautification, did I hear you mention that includes not improving, but repairing our murals?
Yeah, so that has been on our
Yes.
agenda a few times, yes, so carving out some room in our budget to restore the murals. We can definitely add that to the agenda again, but to make a vote on it, but I'm pretty sure that it's do we know?
I believe there is some. in
Yeah,
our
we
budget.
yeah, so yeah, we have discussed that a few times, but it's just been very we're rebuilding, so things have kind of got missed, but we will revisit that for sure. It's been on our radar.
That would be wonderful. I
Yeah.
wish you luck and thank you for your contribution to the town of Midland,
Yeah.
beautiful town of Midland.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We're gonna just have a few more questions before we move on to the next presenter. I have Councillor Probst.
Sorry about that. Thank you for your presentation and the information. And there's so much positivity and great ideas. I have to ask the question, is there no longer a problem with our homeless population downtown?
Well, I will answer this because this. We have a problem. What we have a problem with is services. Money. We need money. So our town needs money, our shelter needs money, services need money. There, as far as I'm concerned, will have to be some fundraising. And last year was an exceptional year, of which I know you are all aware. So we had just come out of COVID and everything had reopened and we weren't stable enough. So the services weren't stable enough. The platform wasn't stable enough to handle what was coming. So I'm not sure how things have been recently. I haven't heard anything. Normally I have people emailing me and I haven't received any emails. I know my experience. But other than that, I wouldn't.
I think the issue was one of our members was in charge of security and following through with our cameras downtown. And then he had just gotten a bunch of stories from downtown business owners. And so it kind of over exaggerated a little bit of the.
We need a little more police presence, not for unsafe, like, to be perfectly honest, and I'm going to speak frank, I'm not sure if this is the right platform, but I work until 3 a.m. and I'm in my back driveway, which backs onto an alley at 3 a.m. And I've been doing this for 10 years and it is very rare that I feel unsafe. I work alone. I'm in and outside of my building. I don't ever have concern for my patrons. I feel like we have a downtown that is run very well. and that is very welcoming to visitors. I think that we need a little more presence to keep things on track, and that includes cleanup. So cleanup of the planters, cleanup of the trees downtown, because that all contributes to our presence. But I feel like this year will be a different year over what was presented last year. And I think we all have an understanding of how to move forward. And we, as a BIA, have a plan that's pretty solid. And I feel like the town of Midland also has some direction this year as well. So I think we're okay.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have one more question from council, and it'll be Council Meredith.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Compton. Yeah, very well done, girls. I have been sitting on the rep of the VIA since its inception, and that was only probably officially about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So they've been working and getting familiar with the process. That's so the challenges that the BIA will have going forward, and I was on the previous BIA for a little bit, is basically funding. I mean, we want to do a lot. And when we compile everything costs money, as our acting CEO would attest to. And we just have to pinpoint on what we can afford to do and spend. So when we're talking about the mural program that we haven't really discussed, which I was a part of a little bit of discussion of the previous BIA, that's a huge amount of money, which going forward with expansion and getting more funding could be doable in the future. They are beautiful to have our murals and to upkeep them, but the BIA can only do so much, and we look for a prosperous downtown, and the biggest challenge is getting everybody engaged. And I think we're on a good path, and staying open late for our prime seasons anyways. I think we discussed it in our last meeting of July and August would be a good 2-month breakdown of stores open at extended hours. So and we discussed previously last summer, you walk downtown at 7 o'clock, you couldn't get a seat at a table because they were closing in a half an hour. So if we get the businesses on board and everybody engaged and collaborate together, and then with beautification, with the town involvement and the BIA, I think we're on the right path. So so we'll see how it goes, and I'm looking forward to the summer and summer events and our next meeting.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. It's just a little quick comment. I think you're one of the great partners that we have, and it's good to have council representation to be on your board and be informed of the challenges and the opportunities. I'm going to allow one more question from the deputy mayor who's been pressing me. So, your worship.
Thanks. Just maybe a follow-up, just dovetailing onto the talk about security and safety downtown. I think one of the liberating aspects of forming this new board was the allowing of them to focus on what is within their locus of control, what's in your wheelhouse. And right from the municipal act, this is something I shared at the meeting, but perhaps it would be worthy to share with the rest of the people following along. There are only 2 functions of the Business Improvement Association under the municipal act. You only have 2 things to focus on, which should really liberate you. And I think it has. It's really allowed you to make this a really good functional plan within the confines, knowing that you don't have to be everything to everybody. You have 2 critical roles to play. And I'll just read verbatim from the municipal act, and that's you oversee the improvement, beautification, and maintenance of municipally owned land, buildings, and structures in the area beyond that provided at the expense of the municipality generally. So, if we come by and we, sweep and tidy up basic stuff, your job is to go that extra layer and, maybe to trim the weeds more than we do, to put beautification in the planters and to go beyond the sort of baseline that the municipality does with their tax money. And the second role, there's only 2, is to promote the area as a business or shopping area. So the safety concerns, promoting it as a business shopping area easily dovetails into safety because things like lighting and everything that helps promote it as a business shopping area. But the minutia of actually dealing with problems of vagrancy, homelessness, people panhandling, things like that. Hopefully you feel now liberated that that's not what you are being tasked to do as BIA board members and your membership, or the money that you collect to do the only two things you actually exist to do. And that those other functions are truly jobs for the municipality. And through us to our policing partners, where policing is the appropriate response, or bylaw, if it's bylaw is our appropriate response, or through our mental health service providers, the homelessness solutions, whether that be the shelter or the other transitional services. These are all things that are tremendous burdens on society, happen in every municipality all across Canada and the US. And they do directly and indirectly impact the core businesses down in the BIA. But the liberating thing is that you're not tasked with solving these things. You do need to deal with them because they are in your backyard, but it's our job as the municipal government in this locale and the service providers that we either directly fund or indirectly support to manage those things. So when you bring those concerns to us on behalf of your membership, we receive that and you can basically pass the torch to us and expect us to manage that while you concentrate on your two prime objectives, right?
Yeah.
So I think that I'm hoping that's liberating for you and your membership. And quite frankly, it puts more responsibility on us as a council and our municipal team. But that's what we signed up for. And you guys are volunteers doing an incredible job. So we will leave you to the promotion of the business and shopping area and the beautification and keep the comms channel wide open, which I know will be this term, absolutely. And bring concerns and things to us so that we can manage them and dispatch the appropriate resources and help you however we can. So I just wanted to dovetail onto the safety concerns, that it's not something you need to directly deal with.
Thank you, Mayor Gordon. Yes, I think you will quite soon notice that once we hit communication on the head, beautification and businesses being open, we will very soon notice that we'll be focusing more on those things rather than other concerns. But that is what we're looking forward to do, bring the attention to the beautification, the flowers, and businesses being open and just bringing life to the downtown and helping any way that we can. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, ladies, for your presentation this evening. It's good to hear the happenings are moving forward. So congratulations on your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Gordon. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cotton, and thank you to members of council. I appreciate it. We'll be back.
Well, that was a pretty healthy discussion this evening with the BIA. We want to move on now to our next deputation. It's with the Huronia Community Foundation. And we have a presenter who's no stranger to the community, but also a past politician. And I'd like to introduce Mr. Scott Warnock to present to council. Mr. Warnock, you have the floor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cotton. It is great to see some familiar faces, both at the staff table and at the council table. And before I begin, on behalf of myself and my wife, Mary, and everyone that's involved with the Huronia Community Foundation, I just want to wish Councillor Downer a quick and full recovery. I can call him Jim because we went through the war together for almost 2 decades. And he's a fighter and a survivor. So I just want to say, Jim, if you're watching tonight or you're tuned in some way, be strong, get better. We can't wait for you to be back. So I am Scott Warnock. I am the executive director at the Huronia Community Foundation. And if I could call on perhaps one of your planning staff to hand these out to council members, it would be greatly appreciated. Mr. Ferguson and I go back a few years in Tay as well. So anyway, I am the executive director at the Huronia Community Foundation. And tonight, we're here to say thank you. A big thanks to the town of Midland, the previous council and the current council for their ongoing support of the community. I've handed out our vital signs report that we put together through a very generous grant from the town of Midland, $5,000 community grant enabled us to complete this report. Mayor Gordon and Deputy Mayor Conton attended our launch event back in March. And we thought it would be a perfect opportunity to dovetail on that and just tell you a little bit more about the Huronia Community Foundation. Next slide, please. Tonight's purpose, simply to make you aware of what we do, how we do it, and how we benefit the Huronia community. Next slide. While Community Foundations of Canada have been around since 1921, the first one was established in Winnipeg. We were established in 2000. We were the 99th community foundation to be established in Canada. I always thought the number 99 with Gretzky was always good luck. So there we are. And today we have grown to 205 local community foundations across this country, and that is coast to coast to coast. Next slide, please. 90% of Canadian communities will have access to a community foundation, and $7.6 billion of assets are held by community foundations right across the country. So this certainly is a going concern when it comes to the charities in this nation. Next slide, please. The impact of Community Foundations Canada, the network impact and how it's grown over the years. You'll see in the year 2000, when the Huronia Community Foundation came into being, $75 million was being distributed through grants and disbursements. If you follow along, you see that each and every year there has been substantial growth. 2020 is an anomaly because we all know what was going on in the year 2020. It was the height of the pandemic, and the federal government pushed a boatload of money out through various programs. One of those was the Emergency Community Support Fund, which about 175 or 180 community foundations took part in, including the Huronia Community Foundation. Our share of that pie was about $135,000, and we were able to provide that in relief to local charities and organizations during the height of the pandemic. So as you see, if you take that out, each and every year since 2000, we just continue to grow, not only locally, but nationally as well. Next slide, please. This is how we do our work. We deal in endowments. It's all about building legacies for individuals or for organizations. And this is just a little map. You know, if you put $50,000 into an endowment fund with us, and by the year 50, the joint of compound interest, and hopefully the market does recover and becomes more stable, you could sit there with a very, very nice nest egg. And a lot of organizations locally take advantage of that. And I'll have some examples of that in just a couple of moments. Next slide, please. Our mission is to build financial legacies to support and sustain our Southern Georgian Bay communities forever. Midland, Penetanguishene, Tiny and Tay, and Beausoleil First Nation it's been the core of our work over the years, but we're expanding. And this is to line up with what Community Foundations of Canada should say we should do. Remember how I said 90% of Canadian populations are serviced by a community foundation? Well, we're kind of closing that gap by expanding into Springwater, Wasaga Beach, and the town of Collingwood. They will now be part of our catchment area and be eligible to apply for grants and funding through the Huronia Community Foundation. Our main focus will remain the 5 municipalities in North Simcoe. But this opens the door because they are served by no community foundation at this time. And CFC, Community Foundation of Canada, appreciates the work that HCF has done. Since 2000, we are now taking on that territory. It'll be a challenge, but we're up for it. Next slide, please. We have over $4 million in assets. That was according to our 21-22 annual report. We steward more than 80 different funds that provide support for our pillars of giving. We have a fund that supports some charity, some organization, some cause that each and every one of you will find dear and near to your heart. It's a perfect way to give back to the community. And we've provided over $4 million in funding to charities since 2001. And we're very, very proud of that. It has really made a difference. Next slide, please. As I said, we steward charitable activities focused on local needs. Our Smart and Caring grants, which we will be launching in the next week or so. It's discretionary grants targeting critical community needs. One thing about the Huronia Community Foundation, we can respond to a community need in a very timely manner. It's right in our name. We are a community foundation. We are not tied to one particular organization or group. We are tied to the community. We provide a number of scholarships, in fact, over $10,000 in support for students across our region. We have donor advised endowment funds that facilitates a family or business giving strategy. I don't know about you. My kids have no idea what Mary and I have supported over the years. When we are at the end and we want to open an endowment fund that will provide funding, we can clearly indicate we want the money to go here, here, and here. With that's through HCF, we make sure that your wishes are answered. And community endowment funds established by a municipality or a local philanthropic individual that targets needs within a specific geography. The town of Penetanguishene has had an endowment fund with us for over a decade. And each and every year, they get a nice little check from the Huronia Community Foundation, and it could be $2,500, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. I always said when I sat in the chair where Mayor Gordon is sitting, that meant I could do $5,000 work and I didn't have to tax for it, which was a win-win for everybody. Or if there was a special little project, like say I wanted to put a different set of swings in a park, and the staff came back and said, well, you know, if we had $5,000, we could do that tomorrow, Your Worship. And I would say, well, guess what? I know where I've got $5,000. We have a fund with the Huronia Community Foundation. Let's tap into that. Next slide, please. Can you tell I'm passionate about this? Stewardship, agency endowment funds. They're put together by agencies locally to create and enhance their long-term sustainability. Charities everywhere are struggling like never before. There was a study that said after the pandemic, 30% of charities would disappear. They're gone because they're gone. They can no longer provide the service they did. So such agencies as Hospice Huronia, Sistema Huronia Music Academy, established an endowment fund with us. Each and every year, they start building that sustainability factor. You go back to that slide, you put so much money in, and after so many years, you have all this money over here. Charities struggle year to year, month to month, week to week, day to day, about how they keep the doors open and how they keep providing services for vulnerable individuals. That's how they build their sustainability. Some individuals provide money designated to one particular cause. We have one that's the money goes to the OSPCA, a direct quote from the lady's will. I want the money to take care of the dogs and cats. Her wish has been answered for many, many years. And flow through. This is one that I'm excited about because what it allows is a charitable cause to receive funds right away. And a couple of individuals came to me about 6 months ago, Your Worship, and said, we want to bring some Ukrainian refugees to Midland, and we're going to need some money to get them settled. And we want to be able to work with the community. How do we do it? So we sat down and we said, well, if you establish this, we can do all the financial work for you. So you can concentrate on bringing these individuals from the war zone to Southern Georgian Bay. So we established the Huronia Ukrainian Support Project. The fourth family is arriving in our community any day now. That fund has been open for about 6 months, and they have raised almost $50,000. And that's just from the public donating to that particular cause. So if there's a cause that needs to be worked on, encouraged, you should be talking to us. Next slide, please. The benefits, we build trust with our donors. We've been around since 2000. We create sustainability for your charity. We've shown how we do that working with agencies. And we reduce your the administration costs. You build the fund, we do the rest. I never thought I was going to have to live by CRA rules and regulations in my lifetime. Boy, do I know them inside out now. You build the fund, we do the rest. We process the fund donations received by check, online, credit card, gift of security, and we provide all the back office support, receipting and reporting. That's all done by us at HCF. Next slide, please. Solid investment strategy. Right now, our funds are pooled with the Toronto Foundation. They have $780.1 million in their investment pool. So we get a really good bang for our buck by pooling it with them. It's been a very, very successful relationship over the years. The targeted annual investment return is 5% after inflation. That is a real challenge now. That's no surprise. The market is starting to recover, but anyone who's in the market is kind of sitting there going, I'll ride this out. And we've expanded our reach through promotion via our publications, social and print media. You can find and follow us at Huronia CF. Next slide, please. And our board of directors. Our president is Don McCready. Don's joined me tonight. We do have a vacancy in our vice president role. Our vice president has stepped away for another commitment. So we appreciate the work that Steve Sprague did over the years. And you can see it's a wide range of individuals. Some come with a background in charitable work. Lorna Tomlinson for many years was at Wendat, right? Mayor Gordon, you know Lorna personally. And Martin Crutchman used to be our auditor. He was no longer our auditor, so he came on the board to help us with our finance committee. He believes that much. And Paul Eichhorn, his day job is at the Georgian Bay Cancer Support Center, and his evening and weekend job is helping me and the rest of the board at the Huronia Community Foundation. And I am the executive director, Scott Warnock. I have been there since 2019, 4 years. My retirement from office lasted 6 months. And then I took on the challenge of the Huronia Community Foundation, and I have not looked back. It is a fabulous organization to be involved in. And I just want to say thanks to the town of Midland once again. As you will see on the back cover, there is the town of Midland logo. We want to thank you for your support, not only with this particular project. A couple of years ago, funding was provided for our Giving Locally campaign, which saw a great uptick, not only in charitable donations, but we were able to kind of work in collaboration with the Shop Local, Give Local campaign. We could have never done the campaign without the town of Midland and a grant from the community program. And we've applied again. I'll get a plug in right away. We've applied again for this year's grant program for our strategic plan. You talked about the strategic plan the BIA's done. From this document, and I think Mayor Gordon, you summed it up. It said this validated everything that you thought you knew. Now it's all here in black and white. It's a fascinating article. It's a fascinating document, and it's a North Simcoe picture. It is not a county of Simcoe picture. It is our neighborhood, the good and the bad. It's all right here. And we just want to thank you for your support of not only this, but all the other activities that you've supported us throughout the year. So with that being said, I want to leave you with thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warnock, for your presentation. First of all, I'd like to thank you as the executive director and your board of directors of the work that you do for the communities of this area. I know the recipients have received support and funding, and what benefits the whole community as it moves forward. And I thank you very much for that. I'm going to open this up to council for any questions to you and probably the president. And we do have a resolution that I'll read after this. So I'm going to begin with Councillor Ball and Mayor Gordon. Councillor Ball.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Warnock, and thank you, Mr. McCready, for coming to our council. I'm going to share that I was on the board for several years and it was really great. It was wonderful. And thank you very much for coming. And I'll be following what the Huronia Community Foundation is all about again. And hopefully I'll be able to, come and help you, perhaps.
That would be lovely.
Thank
And,
you.
and I just want to thank Councillor Ball for actually being part of the hiring committee who took a chance on an old guy that could learn some new tricks. So
Right.
thank you. Thank you, Roberta.
Okay,
Councillor Ball.
thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. I have Mayor Gordon.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. We had a really good chat. And for those folks that haven't yet read the vital signs report, it's I won't call it light reading because it's kind of heavy reading, but you've written it and designed it in such a way that it's easily consumed. And you don't even have to put your reading glasses on, really. I know it's got big print, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, one of the reasons why I encouraged you to come and speak to council and to the folks that follow us online is because we got talking about a synergy at this presentation about how HCF can help the municipality manage its municipal grants funding program, which we're currently accepting grant applications for. I think the window closes very shortly. And I learned for the first time that evening that there's the capacity in your organization to manage that selection process and work our matrix and basically dish out the funding so that we don't have to have a community grants committee and go through all the machinations of reviewing it and staff time involved in doing the same, because you're already doing this on a macro scale. And we'd be asking you if we could engage you to do this on a micro scale for Midland's specific community grants program. So I'm just wondering if you could, share with everybody, because there is a motion that reads very strikingly similar to what I'm talking about, a little bit about how this would work and how it works within the confines of our current grant program, application process, scoring matrix, locality, so we're not giving grants to someone who's doing something in Wasaga Beach, which is still in your catchment area, but obviously outside of the scope of our program, blah, blah, blah. If you could maybe fill us in on that, because I think we, although we probably could call you to the mic again as we discuss the motion, it might help to kind of whet the appetite.
Okay. Yes, at the launch meeting, the launch we had back in March, and Mayor Gordon and I did have a rather lengthy conversation around synergies, and partnerships. To be honest with you right now, Your Worship, since we've already applied for a grant for this year, I think we could take it on, not for this granting cycle, because you have to think, it's underway. We could look at taking it on going forward. I think we could possibly do that. We only have so much bandwidth to do things. Right now, I can tell you what we're working on. We're working on a granting program with the federal government for $315,000. We're working on that now. And we have 20 applications we're reviewing. And there's a lot of heavy lifting with these. So we're doing that. We have a grants committee for that. Our Smart and Caring grants are coming next week? They get posted. And that will take us through till the end of May. So right now we're stretched with those grant applications to deal with. I guess I have a question for maybe staff or yourself. In an average year, how many grant applications would you get for your community grant program? Can somebody give me a ballpark figure? Because it will have an impact on the conversation going forward. Anybody know?
15 to 20, I think, is sort of the average that
Okay.
we get. And they range from organizations like GBGH, which will max out at the $10,000, where you don't have to report back with what you did the money,
I know the drill.
right? You know
Yeah.
the deal.
Yeah.
Right on down to small asks of a few $100s.
Okay.
For like the Angels with Backpacks and those other little.
Yeah.
And what was the other one that had us all almost in tears up here? God love them. But-
Warm and cozy.
That's the one, warm and cozy.
Phyllis came to see you, didn't she? Phyllis is quite a lady, let me tell you, right? We all know Phyllis.
So our asks are never as significant as the ones you folks are juggling with, but they're equally weighty as we try and, take that list that always asks for more than we have in the pot.
Right, yeah.
And try and whittle it down. And of course, our policy doesn't allow us to offer partial, so if someone's asking for 1,000 and we only have 600 left in the pot, we don't give them the 600.
It's all or nothing, right?
Right on.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
but I think you probably read our thing. So if you don't have the capacity this year, we can move on the fly here and we can change or just simply omit the motion that could potentially grant you that role this year. And we could look at doing that for the next intake if you think this is going to complicate things for you.
Well, I could look to Dawn, but Dawn's leaving in September, so this is going to fall back on me. I think from a synergy point of view, I think it works. Okay. Not today, because I'm like, I learned a long time ago to under promise and over deliver, right? So I don't want to say, yeah, we can do this with no problem. And then I've got a grants committee that's sitting there going, Scotty, what were you thinking? Like I have a volunteer grants committee, like with 5 or 6 people on it. Half of them work full time. Like they're doing this out of a labor of love at 8 o'clock on a Friday night. Cause I'm emailing them saying, I need your stuff. Hate to be a jerk. I need your stuff. I know you're at the cottage. But I need your stuff. That's how you lose volunteers, right? So anyway, I think I plan on being around for at least another 1.5 years. If not more, I guess, depends how the people think about it. I would think next year we'd have to sit down and figure out because there is a charge for us to do the work. Okay. And it would have to be, okay, Lindsay could probably figure out what's the staff time involved in going through this. And I talked to Sarah because I had to get the slide thing here today and all the, so I know there's a cost of staff working on this along with your grants committee, and you got to pull everybody together and you got to have a meeting and you got to get all the stuff out and everything else that comes with a cost. It would just no longer be your cost. It'd be a cost that we would and then charge back to you to do it. So I think in all good conscience, your worship, that we could do it going forward. But I think we'd have to be realistic that we couldn't do it this year because it's just simply a time crunch for us. But I think going forward, I think it's a marriage made in heaven.
Thank you. I have a follow-up from the mayor, your worship.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate your candidacy, your being candid in that, because what we don't want to do is set you up for failure. And quite frankly, as I think about this in real time, a largely new council, I think it would be worth having one cycle at least under their belts as a community grants committee to see what that effort actually is and what it feels like. And then they can decide as an option next year whether that's something they really enjoy or do they want to give it up for the small overhead cost of farming that out, if you will, to your organization. So
right.
Probably not a bad thing that you're not ready to approach it right now. Let's let our folks have a chance and a crack at it so they appreciate what's involved in some of those heartbreaking decisions.
Yes, they are difficult decisions. See, I have some flexibility where I am because through my granting program, okay, for example, this $315,000 pool of money from the feds, right? I have 20 applications. Now, some of them, the minimum ask was $10,000. So if they're accepted, they're going to get a minimum of 10 grand. I have requests up to $99,999 because 100,000 sent them to another level to deal with. most of the applications are in the 24, 30, $40,000 range. Okay, so let's say we decide we have the flexibility and say, okay, this is a great project. They want $30,000. There's a couple of things that they're putting in there that we really don't think we should be funding. Like we don't really want to pay for somebody's meal, you know, or whatever, or for photocopying or whatever. They put everything in the application, right? You've all written grant applications. You throw everything in there and hope for the best. So we could turn around and say, you know, it's a great program. We're going to fund it at 70%. We're going to give them 21,000 on the 30. We have that flexibility. We don't have to be all or nothing at all. And that's why, like I said, we have a lot more flexibility because we're not just saying you're the hospital foundation and you have to raise $1.5 million for this particular piece of equipment. Okay. We all know about the problems. We were talking about homelessness earlier, Councillor Prost. Food insecurity has never been higher in this country, and the use of food banks. This year, over the Christmas season, the fund holders at Huronia Community Foundation provided $40,000 in funding to the local food banks. That included the Georgian Bay Food Network. It included the St. Vincent de Paul food banks in Victoria Harbor, Penetanguishene, Midland, and the food bank in Elmvale. They were all supported. They shared in $40,000. I went out and presented the big honking checks. Catherine, we had one for you. and it was like, I felt like Scotty Claus at Christmas. It was amazing. I showed up with this check and they basically said, this means that we can now do this. We can now provide a $50 gift voucher for someone to have a Christmas dinner who wasn't going to have one. You talk about pulling at your heartstrings, your worship, have those conversations. And you see firsthand what a difference it made in somebody's life at Christmas or any time during the year. Anybody who really knows me knows that I'm all the way in or I'm out. I am all the way in. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Warnock. I have a Councillor McDonald.
My question has been answered sort of, and I'll pursue clarification later.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing, are there any further questions? If not, I'm going to read a resolution here. Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Warnock, for your presentation. I'm going to read a resolution here to the staff. This is a resolution that the presentation for Huronia Community Foundations be received. Okay, I have a, I need a mover and a seconder. So moved by Mayor Gordon, seconded by Councillor Post.
Could you read that again, please?
I will read this again. That the presentation from Huronia Community Foundation be received. All in favor? That was carried.
Deputy Mayor, if I could, the reason why we went through this is because we actually had a resolution that included a recommendation to debate whether we would award the community grants program this year to them. But given their lack of capacity, we did a quick edit job with the pen and stroked all that out. So we still had to proceed with the rest of it, which is why we're moving to receive their presentation. And we didn't do that for the BIA, et cetera. So housekeeping.
I understand perfectly. If I could, and I appreciate, I had to be perfectly honest and candid with you individuals, everybody up there. What I would suggest is, since we've had this additional conversation, is that after you have gone through this round of community grants, that perhaps we sit down and start having a discussion of what the model would look like if it came to HCF. Okay, so all that could be put to bed. You know, you're not making a commitment to us. It's just, this is what we think it would look like if we did it. You know, I mean, we could have a grants committee, like our grants committee approves the grant. Then it comes to our board for approval. And the board can say, no, we don't think we really want to do that one for whatever reason. So, I mean, it could very well be, we do the grants, we bring them back to you. If you still want to have the final say, you can have the final say, or you can say, we're taking the politicians out of the room. It's arm's length. This organization has been around for over 20 years. This is what they do. This is their thing. They know the community, because every cause is worthwhile. So that's what I'd like to see going forward, is to keep those lines of communication open. And if at the end of the day, it stays in-house, that's a determination that council will make.
Thank you, Mr. Warnock, for that statement. Worthwhile to pursue this in a dialogue situation. So thank you very much for your presentation. And thank you, council, for your questions. And we will move on with the agenda. Thank you, sir. Thank you. As we move on now to our next item is a committee and local board delegation or a memo. There is none this evening, so we're going to move on now to yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cotton. Just in regards to that agenda item, can we receive a status of the appointments in the near future? I noticed there was an ad in the paper that was still advertising the paper of April the 7th, but the deadline was March the 30th. I'm not aware of what our committee's status is. And I'm requesting that the committee meetings be posted on the councillor calendar, so we're aware when the meetings happen.
I'll have staff respond to that. Do we have the acting CAO or the clerk to respond?
May I ask for some clarification? So you're just asking when are the committees meeting and that council be made aware of those dates? Is that what? the ask is?
Yes, and who have all the committees been appointed? I'm thinking specifically the active transportation. Like, I don't know what the status is of our committees and would like to be updated in the future, near future.
And you have been we had a report on all the committees that have been set. That's already been to council.
But there's been
We
more
were still
since.
advertising for the other committees, including the active transportation. That report will be coming to council at the next meeting for approval of that committee. Council hasn't approved the committee yet, so
Okay.
therefore there is no agenda.
Look forward to the report. Thank you.
Thank you, council. There is a process that is followed by staff, so it's good to just ask the question for clarity. Seeing that, we're going to move on now to item number 12. We have reports and items from the consent agenda. We have 3 items that were drawn from the consent agenda. We also have a presentation from consultants regarding a report, and that's going to be our first opportunity to hear about the fire master plan. We have the chief, Renault, who's here, but we also have a consultant to provide additional information if that's required. Chief, I'll give it to you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you to council. It's with pleasure I introduce Mr. Rick Monkman from Emergency Management Group. Mr. Monkman is the consultant that did our fire master plan. He'll do a quick presentation on how he gathered the information. And then we can follow up with questions if you had some questions on some of the content and the recommendations. So without further ado, with your permission, I introduce Mr. Monkman.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Monkman, you have the
Worship members, council, thank you for this opportunity on behalf of Emergency Management Group. Just for a point of clarification, we call ourselves Emergency Management Group now. We were at one time Emergency Management and Training. We did some rebranding, so we are one and the same company. So you'll see a difference in the fire master plan. If I could start with the next slide, please. Uh-oh. Great, thank you very much. I'm not going to read through every slide, but just that gives you an idea of the scope of the work we looked at. There's many facets of the Midland Fire Department we looked at. We compared the operations to industry standards and best practices. And when I talk about industry standards, I'm talking about the National Fire Protection Association and occupational health and safety and other standards that are out there that we use as a baseline to establish if the fire department is meeting that baseline, which they want to do. If they're not meeting it, we give an idea of what they need to do to bring it up to level. If they are meeting it or exceeding it, that's great. It's a matter of maintaining it. If I might also add that council has the authority of jurisdiction in the operation of the fire department, and you set the level of service. Through the fire chief's input, he will let you know what they can provide, and then council will make the decision as to the level of service for the community. Next slide, please. During the process, we did a lot of research. We held meetings with stakeholders, looked at a lot of data, researched the community, see the best operations, and then we formulated a plan. The plan is a 10-year plan. It had 34 recommendations in it. I want to stress that they're recommendations. They're not mandatory by any means. So we're recommending it. The fire chief will make the decision what he's able to move forward with and what he may need to adjust and bring it forward to council. Next slide, please. When we look at a fire master plan, the fire marshal's office or the office of the fire marshal refers to the 3 lines of defense. They being public education, enforcement and inspections. And then the 3rd line is emergency response, which is the firefighters. We at Emergency Management, we also include now emergency management as the 4th line. When we do a fire master plan, we look at the community's emergency management plans and response, such as you had your tornado a few years ago. Next, please. There are some of the standards that we looked at. There are many of them, very in depth. And as I said, they're the minimal that we want to see a community reach. And then what we do, we make the recommendations. If a municipality is not able to meet the minimum standards and something does happen, they will bring these standards out as reference and go from there. And in some instances, and I hate to say this, it works negatively towards the community because they are not meeting the basic standards of care for the community for service provision. That becomes quite problematic because sometimes the office of the fire marshal in extreme cases may come in and take over the operation of the fire department, which you are in no risk of having that problem here. Next slide, please. So the recommendations we looked at are either operational or strategic. Operational being recommendations that the fire chief could action himself with minimal cost or impact upon his operating budget. And strategic, which are recommendations which must come back to council for approval, such as new stations, additional hires, purchase of apparatus, that sort of things, things of a big dollar value. Next slide, please. So we looked at administration. I must say there's many opportunities when we did our evaluation that the town could work closely with the town of Penetanguishene in your fire service protection. There's a lot of positives on both sides. I think that Midland could help Penetang and Penetang could help Midland extremely. We found that in the evaluation of the fire master plan that there was many duplication of services that are costing each other, that if you join services, you could have possibly a reduction in your expenses, not to mention efficiencies. You have a great organization in that you have a joint response now for working fires between Penetang and Midland. And that operationally affects the whole department in that how they operate is very similar to Midland, and Midland operates very similar to them. So you got a good cohesive operation started now in what services you have been able to jointly work on. And for an example, fire chief, you're sharing an EA. We made some recommendations within the program as well, possibly sharing deputy chiefs, fire prevention training. There's a lot of opportunities there that you could joint share resources and help cut down costs. And another area as well is on apparatus. Rather than both communities buying the same trucks, maybe one municipality would buy one specific specialty truck, whereas the other one may buy another separate entity that Midland could prosper from. So there's a lot of abilities to save funds down the road. Next slide, please. Fire prevention and public education, as we said, that first two lines of defense at the fire marshal's office is now stressing. One of the things that you will need to complete by July 1st of 2024 is a community risk assessment. We find that the community risk assessments are driving the first two lines of defense. The fire marshal's office has recognized, and everybody acknowledges, there's just too many fire fatalities in Ontario. So the goal now is to prevent fires from starting in the first place through public education and programs. Smoke alarm programs, municipalities are mandated to have a smoke alarm program. They also have to have a CO, carbon monoxide detector program as well, and stress the need for the community to ensure that they have working alarms in their homes. So if they can prevent the fire from happening in the first place, you're going to reduce the risks. The other problem that's become problematic for municipalities is the retention of firefighters, especially in the volunteer ranks. The family demands or requirements nowadays, people don't have the time to put into being a volunteer firefighter. And some municipalities are having incredible turnover of staff each year, and it's very difficult to retain the staff. To train and outfit a firefighter to the proper level of NFPA 1001 levels 1 and 2, plus outfit them, you're investing between $15,000 and $20,000 per member. It's a difficult loss when you start losing multiple members because of other reasons. So it's a matter of programs come into place to help retain them. And that could be either financially or assisted with training or other means that municipalities have to really look outside the box. And in fact, we've had clients where the property values where the members of the department live are prohibitive for the firefighters to purchase a house, and they've had to leave the community because real estate values are just too high. The client has looked at purchasing property and renting it out to people who would be firefighters with the commitment they'd be available at all times, if possible, to attend fires. It's gotten that desperate in some locations. Some have also brought in temporary trailers to house volunteer firefighters. So the likes of students that have completed the pre-fire service program through community colleges, they'll hire them as summer students when there's the biggest response gap because people go away for vacations, but they hire them with employment in the area that allows them to leave their employment to come and assist with fire calls. So municipalities have really had to look outside the box to help in service provision. Next slide, please. Training has becoming forefront in the province. It's now mandate that certifications to the NFPA standards for all firefighters and officers, company officers. This is becoming quite an expense, and it's a financial exposure that's going to become on Midland as well, like every other community in Ontario. So it's something that the chief will have to budget for and communicate to council these exposures. Next slide, please. Under suppression, which is the firefighter side of things, we looked at a number of standards. Midland currently does not have 4 firefighters on duty to respond to calls. They have a minimum of 2 on duty, 2 full-time. Then they have to do a general alarm or callback of volunteers, and the truck does not leave the fire station to a general alarm or fire call until there's 4 members on the apparatus. There's been studies that have come out that say that It's preferred that 4 firefighters respond in an apparatus. NFPA 1710, which is for career departments, state that all fire apparatus like engines must have a minimum of 4 firefighters on board. It becomes problematic for Midland because you have minimum of 2 on duty, that by the time members of the volunteers arrive and 2 members get dressed and on the truck, it's quite a delay before the truck actually responds. NFPA 1710 turnout time is recommended for career departments as being at 80 seconds. Currently in 2021, I believe, or 2020 stats, I forget which it was, your turnout time was 13 minutes. That is putting the community at risk in a number of ways. It's putting your residents at risk because a fire doubles in size every 2 minutes. So 13 minutes, it's doubled 6 times. So the fire is 6 times greater than what it was when it was first reported. That does put lives at risk. It also puts the municipality at risk for service provision. So that is something you must be cognizant about. And we did speak to hiring practices, but also some arbitration rulings that professional departments have taken to arbitrators and won, that they were awarded 4 firefighters on duty at all times. In our fire master plan, we did come up with alternatives, how you could meet that goal within a fiscally responsible way. To hire 8 more firefighters at one time is quite an exposure to the community. That's a lot of money. So we've proposed that you bring it in stages and build up that fund to be able to cover those wages, but also you're enhancing your level of fire protection to the community. Once you have 4 on the truck responding within 80 seconds, that is your goal. And that should be the goal of council and the fire department to reach that goal. Next slide, please. Now, increasing the staffing, as I mentioned before, there's quite a financial impact, but also training. Your training costs would be reduced for new staff if you hire recruits who have already completed the pre-fire service program through community college and they have their NFPA standards and certifications to IFSAC and Pro Board certifications. That'll help cut down your costs. Some municipalities don't hire any, sorry, I should rephrase this. They'll hire candidates that have no previous training, and that then exposes them to the high cost of training these individuals. Whereas if you hire people who have already completed that training, that's a fiscally responsible move, and that is cutting down your exposure. Next one, please. Volunteer firefighters, like I said before, retention is a problem across Canada. The one thing I did notice when we evaluated your volunteer fire, yes? Do you have questions? Oh, so, okay. One thing we did notice was that the lack of officers within the volunteer ranks. We suggest that you look at and review that opportunity and analyze the need for officers to be assigned within the volunteer ranks. Span of control ideally is 1 firefighter to a max, or 1 officer to a maximum of 7 firefighters. Currently, you could have 1 captain at the scene looking after 20 or greater number of firefighters. That span of control is a little expansive. So if you had a lower rank, so instead of a captain, you had a lieutenant within the volunteer ranks, they could act as the officer and you would help cover the municipality under the Occupational Health and Safety Act in providing supervision on the scene. Currently, with your present span of control, that is a risk to the municipality under supervision under the Health and Safety Act. Next slide, please. So we did look at the station. The station is 20-some years old. It's in great shape, but as you expand staffing, it will need renovations to be able to house those extra staffing. The station is also on prime real estate. There's no hiding that it is prime location right along the waterfront. During our meetings with other members of council, it was identified that the other emergency services, namely the OPP, is maxed out at their present location. And we are well aware that the county of Simcoe pays a large amount of money for leasing buildings. I'm not sure if they own their building or it's leased here in Midland, but they have done emergency hubs in Simcoe County, such as Innisfil Fire has an ambulance station with their fire station. Clearview has an OPP, paramedic station and fires together. Others are looking at that model as well, but it's also, you could look at it as revenue generating in that you lease the building side that they would be using to the county or to the OPP. So that lease would help offset the cost of the building. We also had some suggested locations, what we looked at. If you could, next slide, please. Next one, please. I'll move forward again. We looked at different locations in the municipality. There was 3 alternatives we looked at as suggested by members of council's property possibly becoming available, but we did not say any one was better than another. Through the fire chief and his analysis of the data he has and his response times and coverage in the city, that'll better identify the best location for a new station. But it's starting to come to the end of its life cycle for the station, and it's something you should start preparing for now, because the cost of a new building is quite expensive, and another exposure. It's not cheap running a fire department by any means. And you know what construction costs are like now. The pandemic has just sent costs for fire services right through the roof. Apparatus has gone up $400,000, $500,000 to what it was previous. To get an apparatus was previously a year to a year and a half. You're now looking at up to 3 years. So if you have an apparatus that's due for replacement in year 20, based on the fire underwriter survey recommended practice, which is 20 years maximum, they start planning for its replacement in year 15 through budgeting, specifications, bids, that sort of thing, in preparation that it's delivered in year 20 of its age. Failure to replace your apparatus and meet the standards of the fire underwriters exposes the municipality, the residents of the municipality and their insurance rates, in that the fire department's grading is reduced. And when the grading of the fire department and your level of service provision is reduced, that proportionally increases insurance rates. So it does have an ill effect on the community by leaving apparatus that is too old to be replaced. The problem also is reliability, that trucks that are old and not mechanically fit will be more prone to break down. I also noticed that a couple of your apparatus are really almost transportation, not functionality. That if you liquidated 2 of the apparatus now and bought 1 apparatus that does 2 jobs, a combination apparatus, there would be funds saved, but also the sale of the apparatus that you have, as we deemed as, I don't like to use the word surplus, but it technically is. Those funds from the sale of those trucks could help offset the cost of a new apparatus. So it's better to sell those apparatus before they hit year 20, because you'll get more return on the sale. We also noticed that the 2 pumpers that Midland have are becoming problematic in that your repair costs are starting to escalate. They're breaking down a lot and they're out of service quite a bit. So not necessarily breaking down, but needing repairs. So that does add up in time in the life history of an apparatus. Some municipalities have a preset life cycle of once an apparatus or a vehicle of any type hits 50% or even 30% of the cost of that vehicle new, they replace it, because then you're back into warranties again. Something that's now coming out and quite prominent in the United States is leasing of vehicles. We have recommended some municipalities look at purchasing used apparatus from the United States. They're getting them for 25 to 30% of the cost of new ones. They're usually turned in within 10 years, but there is quite a saving for some municipalities. I would not recommend that for Midland, because you have a career department, and for the number of responses they have, it would not be in the best fiscal responsibility move to look at a used apparatus. You're better off purchasing new, because you also get the warranty with it as well. Not to mention new technologies that's available in the apparatus. Cancer prevention is becoming quite a hot topic and an issue within the fire service. The legislation is now covering the firefighters, as you know, for many years for covering the expenses of cancer. So now their fire services are being very proactive in preventing cancer exposures through exhaust extraction systems in the fire stations, having mandatory washing of bunker gear, having cancer prevention programs going on, cancer screening. So there's a lot of programs, but if I could return back to apparatus, they've come up with clean cab technologies to refresh the air inside the cab of the apparatus. They're also making compartments that the firefighters put their soiled bunker gear in, so they don't put it inside the cab and inhale some of the off-gassing that's on the bunker gear afterwards. So there's a lot of active promotion going on for cancer prevention. Next slide, please. And a few more of the options we looked at. Again, next one. And the apparatus that we looked at and reviewed. Again, the next one, just to keep moving forward, please. And I have talked about fleets, so we'll carry on. Next one, please. The exposure for financially, if I may speak to, is the community risk assessment, which you have to have completed by next year, as I mentioned. That will need to be completed. So that is an exposure, but also the NFPA standards and certifying your members of your department. We also found that there are cost savings could be had by expediting training on the likes of driver training, so that the volunteers could start driving the apparatus, because currently you have in the collective agreement with the full-time firefighters that they are the ones that are called back to drive the apparatus. Whereas if you had more volunteers trained to drive the apparatus, that need to recall full-time staff would be diminished. And there's a cost saving there of not having to pay all the overtime for recalling staff. So in closing, during our interviews, we found that the members are quite passionate about the town. They're quite passionate about being in the fire service. They want to provide a great service, and they're very upbeat of council's support. I'll be very truthful. I did not receive any negativity from the firefighters towards council, which speaks volumes. I am now available for any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Mr. Mockman, for your presentation. Just a few notes that I picked up is that it is a long-term strategy. It's really a high priority to invest with the Midland Fire Department, and just looking for the future for different opportunities that exist. And I think that sums it up for what I heard from your presentation. So thank you very much. I want to open this up to council to see if there are any questions. I have Councillor Ball.
Thank you. That was a very thorough report. I enjoyed reading it. I just had a quick question. You touched on having the 4 full-time staff members there, reducing the response time from volunteers, which I think is a good idea. I'm just wondering what the implications for volunteer firefighters are. Is there no longer a need for them at that point? How does that work? Can you just give me some clarification on that?
Yes, you will definitely need to retain your volunteer firefighters. You do not have enough full-time staff. And I would not recommend at this time that you look at hiring beyond 4 on the apparatus as a minimum. There's no need to man a second apparatus in Midland because you don't have the call volume yet that would need it. But if you train the volunteers to be drivers, then they could drive the other apparatus as well and operate it as well through the pump operations courses and so on. But to say that it's time to eliminate the volunteers, no, you will need them for many years to come. And you're very fortunate that your turnover is very low. The crews that are on the department, yes, you will have a few that have to leave for personal reasons or other reasons, you know, employment, family, have to leave, but you're not losing the high percentages some departments are losing, which speaks volume to the community as well. Speaks volumes to their dedication to the community that they're staying on.
Thank you for the clarification on that intention.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. Are there any other further questions? I have Mayor Gordon.
Thanks for the presentation. This, for people that follow politics for the past few years, this fire master plan is, I'll call it long overdue, but not in a stern way. It's just something that was asked for a couple of terms ago. And just for a variety of reasons, never got fully put together and presented to council. So it's been a long time coming, and we do appreciate all the hard work that went into this, as well as all the recommendations. The composite fire department model that Midland enjoys, I mean, I think we extract really good value out of that. That's the combination of career professional firefighters and our fleet of volunteers. And as a past volunteer firefighter myself, I was with Tiny for 6 or 7 years. I can speak to the fact that I think you're on the right point here. Volunteers are going to thrive more if they're not just, put in salvage and overhaul roles or roll and hose, like they're driving the vehicles, they're, which all the volunteer departments, of course you do, because that's all you got. They're pump operators, they're trained in auto X, they're trained in high angle rescue. I don't think we do that in Midland, but you do, it's that wide variety. So that the career firefighter and the volunteer firefighter are tasked together to go in or do whatever they're doing, and they're equally trained. And that, I found that really built really good retention in the all volunteer departments. So that blend we have of working with Penetang and Midland and enhancing the scope of our volunteers and getting them more active. And the fact that we have professional volunteer or professional firefighters and their association not resisting that, not looking at it as, stepping on their toes or getting into their wheelhouse. That speaks volumes to the caliber of our professional firefighters. And quite frankly, a little toot for our H&R director. We just got through a round of negotiations with our professional firefighters without going to arbitration for the first time in a very long time.
Wow,
So
that's
we're enjoying a really good collegial relationship with our professional firefighters. And so hopefully they see this report for the opportunities presented in, and some of the timelines that are in there, some of them I think might be aggressive, other ones maybe not aggressive enough. Just from my perspective, I'd like to see us exploring that merger or amalgamation. I hate to use that word, but the blending of the two fire services, Penetang and Midland, exploring that this term sooner than later, and start looking for the synergies and savings and efficiencies that come with that. And quite frankly, if we're going to be looking at a campus style new building to replace where we can bring OPP and emergency paramedics and fire into one building, merging before we do that means we can cost share across that larger tax base, because Penetang will also benefit from enhancements to their building, better response times, not having to buy apparatus that we buy, them helping to buy apparatuses that we help them purchase as well. So bringing those two fire services together as we start exploring other ways to share beyond just a fire chief, not just a fire chief, but you know what I mean? We started with a fire chief.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see us not take a really cautious, slow approach of an fire prevention officer and then maybe a deputy. Let's just go all in. Assuming this is something that's doable and that Penetang is amenable, I'd like to see us really push and explore that sooner than later as we start to look at building that fire reserve that clearly we need to offset the major capital expenses and the soft expenses of our human capital. As we have the need to have more people and meet those response times going from over 10 minutes down to less than 2 minutes. So thanks for this really good read. Long time coming, super glad it's here, and I look forward to supporting our chief and deputy chief and our firefighters, volunteer and career in making these things happen as best we can under the financial constraints that we're faced with.
Thank you. And every municipality is in the same predicament right now financially. There's no getting around it because there's so many needs, and I'll put it that way. And I believe it would be a win-win for Penetang and Midland if they were to join as one fire service. As you're aware, Innisfil and Bradford, West Columbia are presently looking at amalgamation themselves of their fire department. There have been other fire departments that have also joined into one as well in the province. So it is becoming more of a forefront in a way of cost savings. And they're going to be realized, maybe not immediate, but down the road they would be. And if I could also mention that the recommendations are strictly recommendations. There may be something there that the fire chief believes instead of waiting for year 7 to implement, he needs it sooner. So that's his authority to come to council and present it, that I need it sooner. So please don't take any of that as hard fact and the recommendation hard fact. There's always a leeway that you decide with the fire chief's input when he can meet the goals that he wants to meet. And as I said before, you are the authority of jurisdiction, having jurisdiction, setting your level of fire service, and that's your responsibility. So you got to look at what's the best level of service for the community, and such as joining with Penetang, and the other one is automatic aid agreements. I didn't touch on that, which I spoke to in the document. And also response agreements, say with City of Barrie for providing technical rescue. You already are in the County of Simcoe hazmat program, which I was quite familiar with. I don't know if you know my background, but when I retired in 2014, I was the deputy fire chief of Barrie, in charge of operations and training. I was one of the originators of the County of Simcoe Hazmat program and looked after the purchase of all the equipment with that in conjunction with Kathy Clark, who was the emergency management coordinator at the time. That has been a very successful program, but it also has saved a lot of money for the municipalities of Simcoe County that they don't have to buy the equipment and train their people for maybe a what if. Because hazmat calls don't happen that often. And at least you have a mitigation strategy by hiring resources from outside that if you do get a call, somebody is going to come. There's not going to be that question of who's going to pay or whatever is going to happen. That's all worked out in advance. So you'll get an immediate response by entering into either an automatic agreement with neighboring departments for tanker support, or with Midland and joining, or technical rescue and hazmat, which you have already covered. So there is other opportunities for financial savings.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from council? Seeing none, Mr. Mockman, thank you very much. I do have a resolution here to follow up, so thank you for your presentation. Thanks, Chief Renaud, for the introduction. I will.
Thank you again.
Yep, thank you, sir. I will now read the resolution. I do need a mover and a seconder, but I'll read the motion first. That staff report CSR 2023-21 Fire Master Plan dated April 12, 2023 be received, and that the council adopt the fire master plan as attached to this report. And number two, that council take into consideration the recommendation outlined in the fire master plan when deliberating yearly operating and capital budgets. Do I have a mover on this? Councillor East. Seconder. Councillor Meredith. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you. What we're going to do now is we have three items on consent agenda, but I'm going to take as a request for a 5-minute break. Thank you. Welcome back. I'm going to begin now with a continuation of the consent agenda portion. We have three items that were withdrawn, and we'll be addressing this tonight. And also there is motions associated with each of the consent agendas, which I'll read out after we have discussion for each item. We're going to begin with the item of the Bill 23, More Homes Built, Fast Track, Summary and Implications for the Town of Midland. This is a report that looks at the impacts of the bill to increase housing supply for the next 10 years. It's having an impact on municipalities, and we're going to be looking at the item report, and I'm going to open this up because I know it was withdrawn from one of the council members. So I will ask for any clarifications or questions regarding this particular item. Council, are there any particular questions or clarifications that's required for this? Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cotton. I just thought that this report needed to be surfaced in public session and not just as a consent agenda item, because of the impact that it's going to have, not only on Midland, but all municipalities in Ontario. And one of the most disturbing facts is it says right in the report that there's nothing in this legislation requiring the developers to pass on the cost saving to the buyer. And that is something that all residents of Ontario should be concerned about. They're not going to have to pay development charges. That cost is going to be passed on to the taxpayer, and they have nothing implementing or forcing them to pass on those cost savings. I did submit a few questions and I did receive my reply. Thank you very much. I forget your name, Steve, who replied. And I did ask again about the third party, and if you could explain to me what you, again, so people can apply to have an addition to their home or a third building on their property, and we can't deny it.
Through you to our staff member from planning. Sir, you have a response?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, thank you. So what the province has done in an effort to try and increase the housing stock is they are now allowing for third units to be added onto a residential property if it's fully serviced. So that could be in the form of an accessory dwelling unit, so a detached structure in the backyard. Or if you wanted to, say you had a basement apartment in your house right now, so technically that's a 2-unit structure. If you want to do an addition onto your existing structure and create another unit, you can do that. That's permitted as of right. But the caveat to that is that it does have to be fully serviced. So there are some lots within the municipality that are on partial services, so they wouldn't be eligible for the third unit. We do allow currently in our zoning bylaw, before the changes to Bill 23, for secondary units to be permitted, as well as in detached structures. So some municipalities didn't allow for habitation in accessory buildings at all. We were ahead of the game. We allowed that in our urban center, but we will see some impacts with these third units in those existing residential areas. So for example, parking. We want to ensure that there's parking on there, but we're not allowed to request any more parking. That's what's required for the main structure on the property. Also urban design. There used to be provisions that you could require that the doors be situated in a certain way so that when you're visually looking at the building, it looks like a single detached dwelling. That ability has now been removed. We are not allowed to request those type of urban design functions and regulate that. So there will be an impact to that third unit provision within our established neighborhoods, but the province has, in its attempt to increase the housing stock, is now allowing for that additional unit. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor McDonald, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, please. So our bylaws with the setbacks and everything will have to be changed. Do they have to be within the bylaws that as they exist now?
Yes.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. So right now, if somebody were to come in for that third unit, we would be, say it's a detached unit, we would be applying our accessory building structures to that to that particular structure. If it was an addition onto a house, it'd be the same setbacks as the house. So we can't regulate the size of the unit. The province was very strict on the minimum size. We can't regulate that. However, setbacks, lot coverage, those essentially do regulate the size of the building, so they can't come in and have an accessory dwelling unit, third unit, taking up their entire backyard. We do have lot coverage provisions and setbacks that will help regulate that. But some municipalities would have a minimum, say, first floor that the dwelling has to be. So, for example, in Orma-Dante, they used to have a zoning bylaw provision that would say your first floor of your house has to be 93 square meters, so 1,000 square feet. The province has removed that, saying you can't regulate that. So if your zoning bylaw has that, you have to remove that. So we don't have that. in our zoning bylaw presently. So, but there will need to be updates, and that's what the report outlines, that we will have to be coming forward with some policy updates in the zoning bylaw and the official plan as in response to Bill 23. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I may, Deputy Mayor, just that I'm hoping that Midland takes the opportunity to directly send our concerns to our MPP Dunlop, and that this report could be sent to her attention. And that in the near future, I guess I'll bring forward a notice of motion about a resolution to write directly to Premier Ford, specifically stipulating Midland's concerns. I know he's received tons of other communities' concerns, but I would like to be on the record as a Midland councillor, and I'm sure that I'd get the support of the rest of my councillors to let him know our fear of what it's going to do, especially with the loss of development charges revenue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald, for those statements and comments and wishes to move forward on this exterior wise. I do have Mayor Gordon. You have the floor, sir.
Thanks. I got a couple questions. So tiny houses is something that people have been asking if Midland will allow. Would it be safe to assume that if somebody wanted to build, buy, or otherwise acquire a tiny house to put in their backyard, assuming that met the setbacks requirements? The only other requirement contemplated here is that it needs to be serviced. So, you know, they can't have a RV back there with a black tank and go dragging that off to the dump station. It'd need to be hooked to municipal water and sewer, but other than that, tiny homes or something of that equivalent, a trailer type home is permissive as long as it's connected to our services. That's the first question.
Thank you. Through you to our staff.
Through Deputy Mayor, to your worship. So yes, tiny homes would be permitted. It would be just considered as an accessory structure, provided, yes, it did meet setbacks, height restrictions, and the lot coverage. Tiny homes, you would assume, wouldn't be exceeding the lot coverage. Any sort of travel trailer or anything like that would not be permitted because it has to be connected to the full sewers. If someone were, I mean, our zoning bylaw does restrict habitation of those trailers outside of any sort of campground as well. But for tiny homes, yes, we have been getting inquiries about these detached third units. We haven't had anyone come in, but a lot of tire kickers wanting to know, hey, we've seen this come forward. What's the municipality doing? We've said you're permitted as long as you're meeting the accessory building setbacks and provisions. And then as soon as they hear that, sometimes they'll switch their plans and say, oh, maybe I'll just do an addition onto my house, and then I can have that third unit in there as well. So thank you.
Thanks. Just to follow up on that. So a trailer, a lot of these tiny houses are built on trailer chassis and they, you know, they're wheeled to the location. Even if they don't end up sitting on the wheels, they do probably like what I do with my RV trailer, jack it up and it's on cinder blocks at the campground. But if they bought a tiny home that came on a trailer chassis with wheels and then put it on a foundation or something and then plumbed it into the sewer, which is like the trailers are in campgrounds, and you had a water pipe sticking out of the ground, basically like a campground service, toilet and water. Would that be permissive in people's backyards as long as they had the connections?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to your worship. So we'd have to see a little bit more of a detail on it, but typically we'd be reverting it to, it doesn't meet the definition under our zoning bylaw of a building or structure. Typically in those cases, when it's on wheels, it's classified as a trailer. There is some circumstances I've seen where they do take it off the chassis, but then we'd have to look to say, okay, is the intent of what they're doing still meeting that intent of the zoning bylaw and the definitions that it would apply to?
Okay, thank you. So now down to the $25 million question. So what really got me on here was the estimated impact to the town of Midland over 10 years for the DC forgiveness plan. As lofty a goal as it is by the province, your summary, and I'll read it verbatim. It says, as the town of Midland is not part of the 29 municipalities provided housing targets, which was one of the conditions of being made whole. There is no guarantee that funding will be provided should there be financial deficiencies as it relates to the implementation of Bill 23. And as such, the town will have to find alternative funding sources to cover any associated costs as a result of these provincial changes. Perhaps somebody could elaborate on the alternative funding sources for this projected $25 million deficit over 10 years.
Through you, maybe our CFO can respond to that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, to your worship. Alternative, well, I wouldn't necessarily call it alternative, but essentially another tax levy, right? So we've got our sustainability tax levy that is helping us renew our infrastructure and close that infrastructure gap. We may need to look at another type of levy that's 0.5% of our tax rate that is applied annually to make sure that we are funding that renewal, because without that $25 million, that gap gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Probably not the answer you're looking for, but.
Well, it's the answer I suspected. And, you think about this 10-year plan for 25 million, let's just say, we don't get that kind of interest for affordable housing builds in Midland, something that I'm cowering. If I even hear affordable housing in the hallway, I close my door and just turn the lights off. Like, we can't afford it, So if we did $1 million, if we tucked away $1 million every year and just added it onto our budget, and we could do a little pie chart like Doug did on the gas tanks, on the gas pumps, so everyone can know who to throw the darts at. A $1 million a year, that's a 4% tax increase. So take whatever, slicing and dicing we can get through, and between Eagle Eyes, Councillor Meredith here and Councillor McDonald, who were both very astute at reviewing our the minutia of our taxes. Never mind all those efforts. We just have to slap a 4 to 6% tax increase year after year just to try and bolster this reserve, to make good on this pledge that has been forced upon us. Is my math right?
Madam CFO?
Yes, your math is correct. I was being a little more modest and hoping that 25 million is stretched out over 20 or 25 years. But you're right, that is the 10-year projection as of right now.
I'll say thank you, but it's quite depressing, and it's a sobering reality. I think all municipalities our size, especially lower tiers, are waking up to right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just want to say thank you to Councillor McDonald. That's what I wanted to bring up as well. I think there's been a lot of municipalities that have spoken against this, and there's a reason why. Obviously, a 4 to 6% tax increase on our residents each year is not why any of us came up here to do this job. And I think we should be also throwing our support behind the other municipalities and, lobbying at the provincial level that this, as good as some of the suggestions may be, this is not one that municipalities are able to handle. And I think our residents deserve to know that. And we need to support our residents at this level and take that up with the province, who has the ability to change it, because we unfortunately don't.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Are there any further questions regarding this consent agenda item? Seeing none, I will read the motion. I do need a mover and a seconder, so I'll read it. The motion that staff report CSR 2023-18 Bill 23 More Homes Built Faster Act summary and implications for the town of Midland be received for information, and that staff bring forward for council consideration amendments to the official plan and zoning bylaw and any other matters as appropriate in response to legislative changes resulting from changes by the province of Ontario through Bill 23. Do I have a mover on this? Councillor Ball. Seconder, Councillor East. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much for that, and We will move on now to the second consent agenda item. This is the item called taxi licensing program update. There is a resolution, and I do need a mover and a seconder on this. But we will review the report, and if any questions are required, the staff are here to provide that. So I will begin with just a brief, just a synopsis of the report. It's really has to deal with our different partners in town with taxis and community safety, public safety, operator impacts, and then basically the role of our staff to enforce the taxi licensing, but there are other opportunities that emerge from this report. So I'll open up the floor for any questions from staff. I have Mayor Gordon.
Thanks. I'm glad to see this report come to us. And I'm also glad that we were able to provide some measure of restraint over COVID when it came to some of these enforcement, and that it's time to kind of bring this bylaw back to council for review and tidying up. I must tell you that I have been, you know, I've said this and I've heard this from people too, that some of the taxi cabs in our town are in just a deplorable physical condition. Like they're rusted through, parts duct taped onto them, like they're just jalopies. And I understand, you know, from having issues even getting parts for my own vehicles when needed, that there's supply chain challenges that remain in getting parts for repairing vehicles. So I understand that, except, you know, my personal vehicle, you know, not looking great, which, you know, they don't. I'm just saying, with my kid's vehicle, he drives as a bit of a beater. That's one thing, but I'm not in business of transporting people or being an ambassador in our community, you know, with a Midland license stuck to the back of my vehicle. So I did express some concern to our bylaw folks about, let's get back to doing inspections on the vehicles. I'm not overly concerned by year restrictions. I can see where those challenges are for our taxi operators. But I know a 2-year-old car that's falling apart and held together with duct tape and binder twine is, you know, just not something I'd like to see on the roads and licensed in Midland. Conversely, a well-maintained 20-year-old car could be perfectly fine and safe and, you know, represent the community and the service provider that owns it and operates it well. The other thing that I was looking for in here, that because I've heard people asking, hey, what about Lyft and Uber and ride sharing? You know, how does that get regulated if those organizations are interested in formally coming to the community? I know informally we have at least 1 or 2 people that pop up on the app, you know, and do Ubering around the community, but there's not an official Uber presence or Lyft presence in North Simcoe, and that may change in the coming days. So I'm just wondering, from a staff perspective, what would need to change in our taxi bylaw if one of those organizations was to come and do a deputation and express interest in expanding their operations into North Simcoe, maybe with Midland and Penetanguishene as the first target demographic.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will pass this on to our staff member. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, through you. I have Manager Smiley on the virtual line here if there's need for him to supplement the answer. Both he and I have taken a look at the licensing bylaw, and it's very specific right now to taxis. Like this language is oriented around licensing taxis and doesn't contemplate the licensing through the rideshare program. So some of the wording would have to change throughout to address that. We would be doing a review and modeling any future bylaw amendments to deal with something like that based on research with best practices in municipalities where those provisions already exist. We haven't as of yet a request to consider altering the bylaw. There hasn't been an approach to the town from Uber or Lyft seeking that sort of thing. But at such time as that unfolds, we'd be prepared to explore revisions to the bylaw and model it on those municipalities where it works. There had been some discussion on this about ensuring that there's effective coordination with adjacent municipalities, because where there isn't effective coordination, you get into a situation where the the licensed sort of a departure end of the drive with your driver will take you into a municipality maybe that it doesn't have licensing of rideshare programs. So you can get there, but you can't get picked up because the other municipality won't allow the transport of people in not in a taxi. So that kind of is disjointed, and we want to seek some sort of compatibility so as not to inconvenience people, because this is an accepted mode of transportation and increasingly, spreading across the province, and it is only a matter of time. But as you've heard before, we have a kind of a constraint on our resources. So we try to balance between being proactive that we've been able to do with the tax licensing bylaw and acquiring new vehicles, late model vehicles, with later demands to update the bylaw. So we see it coming, but it hasn't landed in our laps yet. But when it does, we're prepared to take that direction.
Thank you, Mr. Farr. Is there a follow-up, your worship?
Thank you for that clarity. So we'll cross that bridge when and if it comes to us. I am satisfied with the report and the recommendations, and I think that we're showing the right amount of leniency to our taxi operators who have served us well for many, many years and at really discount rates. When you look at, metered type taxi cabs in other communities, I think they'd be doing an awful lot. And so I certainly don't want to seem like I'm coming out against the taxis. I know they're suffering in some respects getting parts of their vehicles, but I certainly do encourage continued enforcement by Mr. Smiley. Zero tolerance, basically, where people ought to know better or there's a safety violation, because these are commercial vehicles transporting vulnerable people in our community, and leniency where you see fit, just like you do in every other aspect of your job. So I appreciate that. I'm glad the report got pulled. We had a chance to have this discussion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, your worship. Are there any other further questions regarding this item? Councillor Marinus.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Conton. Just had I read the report, and currently right now, are there two, so I see there's a one one charge, is there two licensing charges, or is there one licensing, or is there two licensing charges for taxis?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, I'm going to ask Manager Smiley to respond to that question.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Meredith, there is two revenue streams from the taxi. One, we license the drivers, so they pay a fee for that. And then we are also getting back into the vehicle inspections, and there is a fee for each vehicle inspection that the taxi brokers have.
Thank you. And just to follow up on that, so thanks for that clarification. So I am also seeing in the model year restriction, which we're talking about here, Barrie, Penetang Machine, Tiny, our neighboring basically communities don't have any model year restriction, and I'm not sure why we're in the business of inspections. If they get a safety, and their vehicle has to be safety to be put on the road, I'm not understanding why the town of Midland is going down that path or that road. I don't know why it was in there before. If it's a fee structure where we're trying to get just an added fee, and I understand what Mayor Gordon was saying, and when you look at Lyft and Uber, and if they're coming into the community, they could post a nice picture on on the app, and they can come and pick you up in a beater. It happened to me a month ago in Nashville, of all places. So it was a vehicle that my wife looked at me like, yeah, this is sketchy. So I'm not sure if that's obviously this bylaw was put in place a while ago. I'm not in favor of it. I don't think we should be in the business of the model year restriction. As I said, Penetang doesn't have it. Tiny doesn't have it. It's listed here. Does Tiny have a cab company? Didn't think so. So Tiny doesn't even have a cab company, but Barry as well doesn't. So it's kind of an unfair advantage if we want to be competitive and support our taxi cab drivers and owners. There's two reputable ones here, Busy Bee and Central. So yeah, I know the report is we're not asking for that to be striked, but I would recommend to strike that report or that clause for the model year restriction, and be even keel with our neighbors, since we do look at our neighbors for other bylaws and comparables. We just last council meeting I was told, we look at their structure, and I'm not sure why Midland differs from Penetang and Barrie.
Through you, Mr. Farr.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, Council Emeritus. So the effect of the changes that have been brought forward are to suspend the requirement to have updated model years. So right now, that provision is not existing, and it's intended at this time to respond to the inflated prices to pick up late model cars and the cost that would be passed on to the taxi companies. So the recommendation is that this be in place for 3 years. We haven't tackled the overall bylaw. While the model year restriction or requirement, update requirement has been set aside, we do have this two level inspection. So there's a roadworthiness inspection, and then there's a kind of like aesthetic functionality perspective, like what's the back seat like? Is it suited to the purpose of traveling and transporting members of the general public in an acceptable state, right? So you're going to see over this period of time where the balance of the town's enforcement and the response from the taxi companies kind of levels out, because the spirit of the recommendation has been to give a consideration to the companies because of this hardship. It just so happens that the points that you raise coincide with another question. And that question is likely to be something that if there was an overhaul, for example, the bylaw to deal with Lyft or the Uber or whatever shared services, we take a look at that. But as it stands, your concerns addressed through the recommendation that's been put out tonight, and where that goes in the future, we're likely to have more information and be able to respond, and council is going to be able to plug into that undertaking at a later date.
Council Emeritus, is there a follow-up, or are you satisfied with the response?
Yeah, I'm satisfied. I know I veered off course there. Thank you very much.
Are there any further questions regarding this item, council? Seeing none, I'm going to read the motion. I need a mover and a seconder on this, so I will read the motion. That staff report CSR 2023-20 taxi licensing program updated dated April 12th, 2023 be received, and that the following regarding taxi bylaw 2011-50 be approved. Second, that the use of discretion be granted to the manager of municipal law enforcement or designate regarding section 21 model year restriction of the taxi licensing bylaw 2011-50 for 3 years, after which section 21 of the taxi bylaw will be enforced. Do I have a mover on this? Councillor Bald. Seconder. Mayor Gordon. All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We will now go on to the final consent agenda item. It's the MPUSC sale proceeds investment committee disbandment. There are recommendations in the report. And there are options to review just in terms of what the report is saying. So I will open this up to council. There is a motion, the resolution. I do need a mover and a seconder, but I'll open this up to council. Are there any questions regarding this particular item? It was pulled, so obviously there must be some. Councillor Meredith.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Conton. I did pull the report, but our CFO, Lindsay Barron, answered all my questions, so I'm satisfied with the answers. Thank you. And I won't take up any more time, and as we want to progress. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. Are there any other further questions? Seeing none, I'm going to read the resolution. That staff report CSR 2023-22 MPUC sale proceeds investment committee disbandment dated April 12th, 2023 be received, and number one, that council approved the disbandment of the MPUC sales proceeds investment committee for this term of council, and that council direct staff to update the MPUC sale proceeds investment policy accordingly. Do I have a mover on this? Councillor Ball. A seconder? Councillor Meredith. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. We will try to conclude with the committee of the whole with just a few more items to go through. We are now item number 13. Are there any notices of motion to be made by council? Councillor East.
To Deputy Mayor, thank you. It was a motion that was written up. No? Okay. Not yet.
Thank you, Councillor East, for that. We have Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor Cotton. I would like to give a notice of motion to create the opportunity for the town of Midland to host a symposium with local social agencies to address our unhoused population of Midland and downtown core concerns.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald. Do we have that recorded? Or thank you very much, Councillor McDonald. That's been recorded, so it will be coming up in the future. Are there any other items to be brought under notices of motion? Seeing none, we will move on now to number 14 of general announcements. Are there any general announcements to be made to the community or to staff or to council? Your worship.
Thanks. Just a shout out to a real inspirational milestone. It's it's hard to imagine 70th wedding anniversary, 70 wedding anniversary for Martin and Teresa Forget from Midland. And I saw their little video clip on the news of CTV. I believe it was yesterday, and 70 years together. So if that is definitely worthy of a shout out at a council meeting. Congratulations to both of them for pulling that off. I thought pushing 30 was a lot of work, but I got 40 more years to catch up to them if I live that long. So anyway, congratulations to both of you.
Thank you, your worship, for that. Any other announcements? Seeing none, thank you very much. We will move on now to a motion to close the committee of the whole and to resume formal council sessions. And I do have a motion here moved by Council Meredith, seconded by Council Prost, that the committee of the whole rise and report. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Your worship, you have the floor.
Thanks a lot. Moving right along, we're at number 16, moved by Councillor Bald, seconded by Councillor East, that the recommendations of the Committee of the Whole for the meeting of April 12th, 2023 be adopted as resolutions of council. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. All right, up next, we have a slew of activity under section 17, motions for which notice was given. Some of these are carryovers from our last meeting. For those who follow along, we had a medical incident that caused us to pause right midstream on debating one of these motions, and we never got to the ones that followed it. So they were copied and pasted onto this evening's agenda. So we're going to carry on exactly where we left off. Well, without the chest compressions. So at any rate, super happy that we're able to continue the conversation where we are. And again, that Councillor Downer is on the mend. I look forward to him coming back and resuming his chair here. So that being said, there was a motion on the floor moved by Councillor East that needs a seconder, which I'm willing to second for the sake of getting this thing on the floor. And that motion was to defer the Midland Bay Landing debate that we were just undertaking to a future council meeting. And my only ask as a seconder would be that a friendly amendment to this, that rather than just leaving it kind of ambiguous, deferring it to a future council meeting, that we defer it to a future council meeting and a staff report outlining recommendations. Because I'm getting into the discussion part of it now, but there was a clear sense at the time that although I was properly using the notice of motion process, where you have to verbally articulate the motion and the supporting evidence and everything else, there's no PowerPoint, no reports, none of that when you do a notice of motion. But there was a concern, both voiced by two councillors present, but probably thought by others, hey, you know what, this is a really big deal. We're talking about the potential to split Midland Bay Landing in half, do an RFP for one half of it, citizen-led steering committee together. This is a really big deal. And this is not a motion that I would like to see this council pass in a split fashion. There's all kinds of things I'm content to win by a majority and, let's move on. That's the way it works in democracy. But the future of that piece of property in our community is not something that I'd like to see anything but unanimous support on our council to move forward on. So there's no mechanical way for me to do that. When you call a question, the question is a question, and we either win it or we lose it. And if we win it without unanimous support, that's the way it is, and it moves on. So I am grateful to you and the pause that we had because of the delay to have thought about this, listened to Councillor Downer's concerns, Councillor McDonald's concerns, and perhaps the unspoken other members' concerns, because I know I never got a chance to even speak to this motion that I brought forward with the deputy mayor. And that may have been the best thing that ever happened, because now we have the opportunity that clearly I'm supporting to defer this for a staff report coming to us at a future date where we can all kind of ruminate on the options and have staff tell us, well, here's the pros and cons, things that we were going to have to do verbally had we proceeded with the motion that we're now talking about deferring. And we will now change that to a staff report. So I'm 100% fine with that. If you don't mind, as the mover of this deferral, if we could defer it rather than with the ambiguity of just to a future meeting. We still don't know what that date's going to be, but with the purpose of bringing a staff report back to council. And if council's all right with that, that's all I really have to say on the deferral, which is all we can really speak to here, and I will support it. Guess I'm chairing this. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, your worship. I support the deferment. I think the fact that we are in the process and we're doing a due diligence approach. Just wanted to just say that up to this point, we did request a report from our staff, and which they did. And so there was just need requirement for further clarification. There needs to be a better transparency in the approach, so every council member is aware of the situation. There were no backroom discussions, or we just followed the process. I think the fact that we need to work together, and I am absolute in terms of moving this forward with a staff report that satisfies all council. And I figure that we all want to be in the same place. It's going to take a bit longer, but that's normal for a process for such a big issue. So I support the motion.
Councillor Meredith.
Thank you, Mayor Gordon. Through you to staff, do we know approximate how long this staff report will take? Approximately?
My challenge is I'm the one writing the report and I have some vacation scheduled the end of May and into June, so I'll say June.
Any
Thank
follow-up?
you. No, thank you.
Fair enough. So we all know we're going to get there. We're just going to kick this down the road a bit and use a process that we're all more comfortable with, which makes me happy because I want us to all be comfortable with this one. So I'll call the question. All those in favor of this deferral? It's implied that they're coming back with a report. I don't think we need to put that wording into it specifically. Mr. Campbell, is that fair to say? We're deferring this to a future meeting. We don't need to put a date or instruct you to come back to the report.
I will bring a report back as soon as possible.
Fair enough. Sorry, so I think we informally called the question, but based on that, is there any further discussion on the motion that we're about to vote on? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? All right, that is carried. All right, item 17.2, which again is a copy paste from March 22nd's agenda. Now this was moved by Deputy Mayor Conton. However, that was simply because Councillor McDonald was fresh off the red eye from her vacation, and we weren't sure whether she would be here for her motion that she'd actually put into motion. So on the agenda, it says moved by Deputy Mayor Conton. I mean, it's still procedural. I want to call out the fact that it's here because of Councillor McDonald's bringing it to our attention. Therefore, it would be great if you would second it. That was fantastic. And I'll read this beast. It's very important though. Whereas the homeless,
just with an addition, or I don't know whether we have to actually add it on that our MPP Dunlop also receives a copy of this on the last and further that a copy be sent.
fair enough. Can we tack that on the fly? That the list of people who will get a copy will include our MPP, Jill Dunlop. Fantastic. All right, so I'll read this. Actually, you know what? Councillor McDonald, would you like to read this? I don't think I'm breaking any, am I breaking any rules? No, very good. CAO says no, so it's all yours.
Thank you very much. Whereas the homeless crisis is taking a devastating toll on families and communities, undermining a healthy and prosperous Ontario. And whereas the homeless crisis is the results of underinvestments and poor policy choices of successful provincial governments. And whereas homeless requires a range of housing, social services, and health solutions from government, and whereas homeless is felt most at the level of local government and the residents that they serve, and whereas municipalities and district social administration boards are doing their part, but do not have the resources, capacity, or tools to address this complex challenge. And whereas leadership and urgent action is needed from the provincial government on an emergency basis to develop resources and implement a comprehensive plan to prevent, reduce, and ultimately end homelessness in Ontario. Therefore, be it resolved that the town of Midland calls on the provincial government to urgently acknowledge that homelessness in Ontario is a social, economic, and health crisis. Commit to ending homelessness in Ontario and work with AMO and a broad range of community, health, Indigenous, and economic partners to develop resources and implement action plan to achieve this goal. And further, that a copy of this motion be sent to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Minister of Children, Community and Social Services, the Minister of Health, and to the Association of the Municipalities of Ontario, and to MPP Jill Dunlop. Can I do all those in favor?
Did you want to have any discussion on this AMO-led initiative? Or I mean, it is quite expansive what you just read, but not sure, does any other counselors like to weigh in on this? Or know where this came from or? Yeah, sorry, your mic was malfunctioning. Can you read it again? Just kidding. Any discussion around this? Effectively, we're adding our voice to the chorus and sending this off to the powers that be, letting them know that Midland is equally concerned about this issue in our municipality as the 443 other municipalities that make up AMO in Ontario. Fair enough then. All in favor? Any opposed? And that is carried. Madam Clerk, we'll just have to update the printed copy with the who moved it and seconded it. Fantastic. All right, item 17.3. Councillor Ball's been looking forward to this for quite some time. This is as directed at the February 8th, 2023 regular council meeting. Councillor Ball had prepared a draft terms of reference for the proposed Youth Advisory Committee for council's review and consideration. So I have this motion. Moved by Councillor Ball and seconded by Councillor Prost. The council reestablished the Youth Advisory Committee. I'll open up for conversation or discussion around the draft terms of reference. Councillor Prost.
Thank you. I just have a couple of questions and maybe a concern or two. So in the terms of reference, it says to include another partner. So just to clarify for myself, in my mind, if we were to have a town council, youth council or youth committee, I think it should be only the town involved, not to say that these kids learn how to go out in the community and create partnerships. I don't know if having that partner within the terms of reference is the way it should be. And then there's the padded bank account. I don't know if I approve of that either. That's just my opinion. If they find they need money, one of the learning experiences is to go out and find it. I'll let you answer those and clarify that for me first, please.
Perfect, no problem. So the partner organization staff, the reason I put it in if required, it's not a necessity of the terms of reference, but this leaves it open to allowing other municipalities who may want to come in part with us, as well as the community organizations that have expressed that they would offer paid staff members to help with this initiative as well. It's not a requirement. That's why it just says if required. It's not a requirement in the terms of reference. It's just there in case we're able to offer that to other municipalities. That would be included under that as well. And the money, one of the things that we've talked probably at length with is like developing videos for how-to videos, and that the town of Midland was planning to take that initiative on at a staff level. I thought that was something that could be brought to a youth advisory council. So that I thought that funding would maybe go along with that, is that it's a less funding than we would require of our staff members to do, to put those videos online and to film those videos, and allow the youth and partnerships within those schools to bring that to us. And if they needed that small amount of money, that we may be able to offer that, and at least it's in there to be able to do that. That's my thoughts regarding that. So you can speak to that if you want.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. I'm really not trying to squash this. I do think our library, the kids can do so many things there and it would be free. We're already paying for that. There's a lot that they can investigate within the town and find things to do that aren't going to cost money, but could generate money. That's just my thinking. Like, these are youth. We want them to be proactive. And if you want something, you go work for it. Right? That's just me personally. Would you be opposed if the outside partner was specified that it was another municipality rather than an outside organization? Because I think that we should stand alone if we're going to be a Midland Town Council or a municipal town or youth council.
I think that's kind of just getting stuck on it. It's not a requirement of the terms of reference. I just think that that allows us to be able to collaborate with as many people that are offering to help with us. And I think limiting that, I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. I think the more people that want to be able to help youth and the more resources that surround youth and being able to get this off the ground and be able to be an effective council, I would like to see that just more broad than that.
So I don't really think that limits any kind of community connection, because it's about going out there and making those partnerships and those relationships. So for me, I don't see that as an obstacle, but it also says that a member of council is also, if required. And if we're going to be a Midland Town Youth Council, I think there should be somebody on there, maybe even more than one council member.
Yeah, that was just from the terms of reference that are required by the town. So I've already obviously thrown my name into that hat that I'm more than willing to do that. And have made that commitment and will make that commitment publicly now that that's my intention, that should this pass, that I have no doubt in my mind that I will be there. And that's my intention, to get it off the ground and to continue to support that on every level.
I got one then. So I mean, this is one of those really feel good things. Like, how can you be against keep getting the youth involved in our community, or feel like it's really difficult. I guess my only concern is I don't really see any KPIs. Like, what can we use to measure after 1 year that, hey, this has been effective? We need something that's achievable, a SMART goal or 2 or 4 for this committee to actually do, beyond just being a social club that is effectively babysat by staff at taxpayer expense, right? And this has been tried before, as we already were cautioned in the past, and it fizzled into nothingness. That's not to say that this time that it won't succeed, but we do need to be, we got to set our expectations. There should be some measurable goals assigned to this. And I definitely think we need to remove the asterisks from the 1 member of council if required from committee composition. Because if this is going to be ours, we're putting staff members to it. I think there's an expectation that there be a member of council assigned, even though it's not legislative required. By leaving it with those asterisks in there, if required, technically whoever was assigned could step away because they're too busy. No one else got time. Now we left the kids with just a staff member, right? So we just want to put some protections and guidelines in place, so there's a really clear reason for existing, and what we can do to say at the, next time budget cycle comes along is, hey, this is worth keeping going because they did X, Y, and Z. And this is what we set out to do X, Y, and Z. Just as an example, can you speak to a little bit of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think no problem. Remove if required. That was just the terms of reference that are the legislated terms. No problem. I remove it. To me, that's not anything. I've already committed to that. So I think that there's been a lot of discussion around this because of failed experience, which nobody could find the old terms of reference. Nobody could find the reason for failure behind it. So I think to ask such a big thing without allowing youth to even get together to use their skills to try and even promote events or discuss what they want to do within the community, or have the ability to be able to talk with us and amongst themselves to create that committee. We don't know what they're going to be able to accomplish if we're setting that limitation. The terms of reference are there as to what their goals are. And within those parameters, I think that they should be allowed the opportunity to connect with each other, connect with us, and specifically decide what they want to do for the area. And I think there's been terms of reference for committees that are much broader than this that we haven't even had a discussion on. So I think that allowing the opportunity for it to come to fruition is the first step in being able to measure that. You can't measure something against a failed committee from previous years, which we don't even actually have all the information as to why that even happened or their terms of reference. So I think that's, with all due respect, is unfair.
Okay, so just in follow-up, I guess what I'm suggesting is that perhaps meeting one or the first two meetings objective would be to set out a mini strategic plan, much like the exercise we just went through as a council, and come up with some reasonable, actionable goals, things that they'd like to achieve, and narrow it down, because of course we had, you know, like 100, and we ended up, we haven't seen the report yet, but it's going to get narrowed down to something we can actually hopefully pull off this term. So that same kind of task could be done without, you know, paying for a third-party consultant to lead it, based on your experience now, to set some achievable goals, even if it's only 3 or 4 for this year, and then focus on how to do them with the least amount of funding, at least from us, if maybe there's external fundraising, and let the youth kind of set their own goals, and then come back to council after you've done that strategic plan, and perhaps have the youth leaders come and give a deputation and present that little strategic plan to us. And that, to me, that would make me feel more comfortable that there's actually a North Star that they're shooting for, rather than just kind of something vague and ambiguous that this is, strategically set up to do right now. So if that's the kind of intention, and you're going to be the person on this, you're going to do all the heavy lifting. So I would be more than happy to support this and give it a fair shake, and then look forward to that deputation in the coming, few months, once you get the membership together, and hear about what the goals are for this year. And so I can really feel like we can get behind this. Is that a reasonable ask?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we're only speaking to terms of reference, so that wouldn't have come into the conversation before. Obviously, if I don't have a youth council, I can't strategically plan, and I would never want to strategically plan by myself without a youth council involved, because that defeats the entire purpose of having a youth council. So 100%, that is the intention behind creating this, and that is exactly what I would want for the first few meetings, would be having youth input as to what they would want to do, and as well the collaboration from us as to what they can do for our town as well as for our council.
Okay, that's fair. And just, this is a small thing, but we seem to be interchanging youth council and youth advisory committee. A council would mean that it's basically like a replica of us, having actual formal structured meetings and Robert's Rules of Orders and blah, blah, blah. This advisory committee is more loose and more ad hoc, and could be fed tasks or thing to look into or comment from this council, as well as defining their own, strategic goals as a group. So I think it's important when we communicate this moving forward, especially based on the motion, that we make sure we call this a youth advisory committee and steer clear of calling it a youth council, because that is something that is formed in other municipalities and is structured much like this. Sometimes even sitting in council chambers in our chairs, doing our kind of thing, only youth focused with a much smaller budget. So at any rate, I'm content to support this with that, couple of edits on our draft here, which I don't know if, do we need to define those specifically? This draft. My only suggestion would be that in committee composition, item 1, first bullet point, that 1 members of council, we remove that bold if required, just to make sure that it's abundantly clear that there's an expectation that this thing does not exist without a member of council on it. Councilor Meredith.
Thank you, Mayor Gordon. Just going back to last agenda meeting, there was talk of tiny townships. They had some staff possibly. They were going, I believe it was April 5th. They had a meeting. Was there any outcome from that, or?
I'll let Mr. Campbell respond to that. We did talk about that earlier today. I was asking the same thing in the hallway.
Through your worship, it didn't make their agenda item, so we don't know the outcome. I presume it's on a future council meeting for them to discuss.
Thank you.
All right, well, no further discussion. Call the question. I'll repeat again that the council reestablished the Youth Advisory Committee. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that carries. All righty, number 17.4. This stems from a deputation we had last council meeting. So this is moved by Councillor Ball, and we need a seconder to get on the floor. This is about the dog bylaw. Oh, Councillor Prost. And it reads that staff be directed to prepare a report and review the town's licensing and control of dogs bylaw 2009-18 with respect to considering eliminating the number of dogs permitted per household, provided they are spayed or neutered. Any comments or questions about this requesting a staff report? Okie dokie, call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Oh, sorry, opposed? We've got 3. And in favor, we have 4. Okay, you're in favor? Yep, sorry, that counts. Yep, passes. All right, so we'll look forward to that report at a future council meeting. We don't put timelines on these things. We just know that staff will get to them. Okay, well, that went a lot faster than I thought. So that's great news. We're into 18. And so we're going to march through the bylaws and then we're almost done for the night. So item 18.1, it's an item from the March 22nd, 2023 agenda, bylaw 2023-13, a bylaw to authorize the town to assume a portion of Cook Drive from Simcoe Boulevard to approximately 80 meters east of Simcoe Boulevard as a public highway. I don't think we pulled this to have discussion last time. The report was pretty self-explanatory. It is attached to your agenda. Are there any questions about this before I call the question? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? And is carried. Next is item 18.2, also from the March 22nd, bylaw 2023-14, a bylaw as amended regulating the setting of open air fires, including establishing the times during which open air fires may be set, and to repeal bylaw 2015-52. So this bylaw will have the amendments that were made in our discussion at the last meeting. Is there any further discussion on this one before I call the question? People were lining up today to get their fire permits. I'll tell you that in the hall. Councillor Meredith.
I just want to just make a note that it's 2 a.m. in Tiny for burning bylaw, just an informative, some information. We're comparing townships. Thank you.
Fair enough. And just by way of procedure, I know we're passing this now, but if there is a will to revisit any components of any bylaw, including this one we're just passing, you can bring it forward as a notice of motion and we can bang that around and fiddle with it, you know, weekly or every 3 weeks, it really. But there is a capacity to do this. So I just want you to know that we can do that. I know, yeah, Mr. Campbell's going, no, you can't. Do not do that.
We do have a reconsideration bylaw. There are timelines for reconsideration. So in this case, council did deliberate the time, so it cannot come back quickly.
We need to take a pause. You got to burn through that cord of wood before you can come back. All right. That being said, is everyone? Well, I better read this again because I've gotten myself all off topic here. Bylaw to, as amended, regulating the setting of open air fires, including establishing the times during which open air fires may be set, and to repeal bylaw 2015-52. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. That's okay. It's democracy. Oops, I'm not supposed to sign that. I just signed something else. Hopefully we pass it. Next is 18.3. Bylaw 2023-15, a bylaw to authorize the appointment of Richard Renault as the fire chief for the town of Midland and to repeal bylaw 2015-47. Any questions around this one? It's housekeeping. All those in favor? It's carried. Next, we have bylaw 18.4, bylaw 2023-16, a bylaw to appoint municipal law enforcement officers for the purpose of enforcing fire-related bylaws within the town of Midland. Questions, comments? All those in favor? That is carried. And last, we have 18.5, a bylaw to appoint municipal law enforcement officers for the purpose of enforcing municipal bylaws within the town of Midland. Any questions about that? That's because we're hiring more bylaw people, giving them powers so they can actually do what we're paying them to do. All those in favor? Very good. That's carried. And next, we're moving to confirmatory bylaw 19.1, bylaw 2023-20, a bylaw to adopt the proceedings of the regular council meeting with closed session. There wasn't a closed session tonight. Held, oh, sorry, on April, that's tonight, yeah. Because it doesn't matter. All right, so to proceedings of our regular council meeting with closed session, we didn't have one, held on April 12th, 2023, and to authorize its execution. All those in favor? That is carried. And next, I have a bylaw that is not on the sheet, but I know it's one we do. Moved by Councillor Prost, seconded by Councillor Ball, that bylaw 2023-20, being a bylaw to adopt the proceedings of regular. Oh yeah, that was the one we just did. Sorry about this. You can tell it's getting late. That's the one I pre-signed, so I'm glad it passed. Last but not least, let this end now. Moved by Councillor Prost, seconded by Councillor Ball, that the regular meeting of council adjourn at 9:23 p.m. Those in favor? Fantastic. Carried. Thanks, everybody. Good night.